The boy woke up on the cold ground, trying to remember what had happened. Fragments of the game flickered in his memory: a room, a monitor, and suddenly darkness. Looking around, he saw an unfamiliar forest around him, sat under a tree, and wondered where he was while a caption informed. His name was Suzumi Akid. He was 21. After finishing college, Akid devoted himself to the MMORPG Mazard Online. The game hooked everyone. He hadn't slept for 3 nights in a row, living in hope of a rare drop, but even after 10 hours the item did not drop. His head was splitting, his body felt light, and reality was blurred. He came to his senses and found himself in the middle of a dense forest. He was wearing ordinary clothes, but his body felt strangely light, as if he had woken up after a long sleep. Looking around, he could not understand where he was or how he got there, and the unfamiliar surroundings filled him with anxiety and confusion. To calm down, the boy decided it was just a dream. 4 sleepless nights had taken their toll. He couldn't hold on and fell asleep. Without worrying, he moved forward through the forest and was already thinking about how he would later apologize to his guild for missing the game. Nearby, Akid noticed a 6-legged creature resembling a dog, greedily tearing at the carcass of another animal. The beast raised its head. A muffled growl escaped from its jaws, and Akid froze in place, realizing he had gotten into a dangerous situation. The 6-legged monster moved toward him, growling threateningly, and he stood still as if assessing the situation. Even now his thinking remained gamer-like. He analyzed the threat as if it were a combat anomaly, and it seemed strange, perceiving danger through the prism of gaming terms. Suddenly a window appeared before Akid's eyes, like a status panel from an RPG. The screen clearly displayed the name, level, and stats. The system responded to his words, and he froze in amazement, not understanding why a game menu had appeared in the real world. The hero examined the panel and immediately noticed the magic energy indicator. MP 12 units, too many for the first level. The description said that energy regenerates at 10 per minute, and this only fueled his suspicions about the strangeness of the situation. Analyzing the data, Akid felt a chill. An average person's MP reserve is only 10 units, and his own stats were unnaturally high. In the list of skills was alien from another world, next to talents in magic and martial arts, but he still believed it was a dream. The system explained. The skill alien from another world affects learning speed and magical abilities, and the character's strength depends on how significant he was in his past life. It sounded logical, but too real. Touching the tree bark, Akid felt its roughness and suddenly doubted whether this was a dream at all. From the shadows, 6-legged wolves emerged again and slowly approached. One growled, not taking its eyes off him. The boy recognized the same creatures he had seen before, outwardly calm, but the tension in the air grew increasingly palpable. Realizing the danger, Akid ran away. And even if it was a dream, the fear felt real. Running, he suddenly noticed he was moving faster than ever, possibly due to the effect of the alien skill, and the new feeling of power filled him with surprise and admiration. But his pursuers did not lag behind. 6-legged dogs, which he called greens, chased after him, surrounding him from all sides. Growling echoed through the forest. Running did not help. He had to act differently. He'd climbed a tree, escaping from attackers. Below, a wolf was growling at him. The boy noticed that the jump was exceptionally high. This very fact saved him from death. Sitting on the branch, he watched the animals intently. Staying in the tree was dangerous. It would soon be night, so the boy shook off fear and decided to get out of the forest. He called up the status menu and began searching for useful skills, and determination flashed in his eyes. Had to use everything he could to survive. In the list, he saw the skill Information Analysis. From the description, it was clear that it allows evaluating objects in the field of view. He guessed that it was thanks to this that he had previously seen the parameters, and obviously it was a high-level skill. Test his abilities. Keed aimed at the nearest wolf and activated analysis data instantly flashed. Creature green wolf, rank F, health 35, magic 0, high strength and agility, and he carefully studied the characteristics, searching for a weak spot. Comparing the data, Keed felt anxiety. Even an F-rank creature at power 32 direct combat was dangerous. He recalled his magic talents that could enhance spells, but he had no weapons and couldn't cast, so he opened the inventory and looked into the Equipment tab. A menu with item slots appeared before his eyes, and suddenly Keed felt something materializing from the panel as if the system was creating real objects. The slots were empty, but the very fact was impressive. Reality and the game merged into one, evoking wonder and cautious admiration. He realized before him was a real inventory interface. The capacity matched his MP12 slots. All empty, but that meant one thing: possibilities existed. Keed suspected the system hid commands he had not yet unlocked. He decided that the magic had to be spoken aloud and tried. Keed shouted the spell, and nothing happened. No flame appeared. Despite high stats, the attempt failed, and the boy sighed it was a pity that everything was not as simple as in the game. Suddenly a flame flashed before his eyes. Keed recoiled. A fireball hung frozen in the air. He stood stunned, looking at it, realizing he had just created a real spell. Perhaps magic really does not need words, only a clear image is enough. Enthralled by the discovery, he immediately decided to try again. He focused and imagined a larger bullet bursting from his palm. The wolves stirred cautiously. Keed felt a surge of strength and excitement he hadn't experienced in a long time, a true thrill of battle. Focusing, he released a fiery projectile from his mind toward the nearest wolf. The bullet burst from his hand and flew straight to the target. The boy froze, not believing his eyes. Magic truly obeyed the will, and this became the first proof of the reality of the new world. A fireball hit the beast and exploded with a blinding flame. The wolves did not manage to escape and found themselves in the very center of the explosion. The forest was engulfed by tongues of fire and cries of pain. The spell worked instantly and destroyed everything around. For some time, Keed stood silently, then he couldn't hold back. He raised his hands and shouted with joy, but suddenly heard a strange sound. Something clicked in the air nearby, and he sharply turned around, trying to understand what it was. A level-up sound rang out, and suddenly a new panel with parameters appeared before him: name, age, race, skills. Magical energy jumped by 500 units, and among the new skills, fire magic level 1 lit up, and he smiled, meaning the spell really worked. But joy quickly turned into anxiety. Flames engulfed the surrounding forest. Grass, branches, trees were burning. The crackling and heat forced retreat, and Keed watched fearfully as the fire spread, having miscalculated the power of his spell. Screaming from the heat, the boy searched for a way to extinguish the flames. Remembering magic, he concentrated and imagined a powerful stream of water bursting from his hand. And the next moment, a water flow burst from his palm directly into the fire. The water hissed and swallowed the flames, extinguishing the burning trees. Suddenly, a message appeared on the screen. A new skill acquired: water magic level 1. The ground beneath his feet became moist, and the fire began to die down, while at the bottom in small print flickered an explanation. The effectiveness of magic increases with intelligence. Using magic, Keed felt something leaving his body. The mana indicator lit up on the screen: 507 out of 1512. The costs were minimal, only 1 unit, and the boy realized. His spell barely consumed energy, which opened huge possibilities before him. Keed opened the storage interface. 2 active slots with items instantly flashed on the screen. He sighed deeply and leaned against a tree. Looking around, he suddenly realized this was not a dream. He sat on the grass and quietly whispered that he accepted the reality of this new world. Night wrapped the forest, and a thin crescent moon softly illuminated the ground. The boy sat for a long time and went over what he had experienced, recalled stories about heroes who ended up in other worlds. And this thought suddenly calmed him. The feeling that he too had become part of such a story slowly took root in his mind. Keed sat on the grass and painfully recalled the past. His parents died in a car accident 2 years ago, and he had no close friends. Perhaps that was why fate chose him for this world, but even realizing his reincarnation, he did not know how to return. The hero smiled and looked ahead. If there was no way back, then he had to live here. He decided to enjoy his new life and hoped that this world would be peaceful and bright, not gloomy and cruel like those he had read about in manga. Suddenly, the forest was torn by a piercing scream. Keed raised his head and listened tensely. The second scream made him alert. Somewhere nearby there were people. His heart beat faster, and the situation demanded immediate action. The boy jumped up and saw ahead a cart surrounded by people and wild beasts. The carriage was being attacked by wolves. One of the guards was desperately defending, protecting his comrades, and nearby another beast was preparing to leap. Keed recognized the attackers as green dogs. Water magic did not reach the target, and fire magic could hit the cart, but despite the risk he decided to act, clenched his fists and moved forward, preparing a spell to intervene in the fight. He froze and imagined a sharp stone spear bursting from the ground. The next moment the earth tore open, a stone spire grew, piercing one wolf. It was his first combat spell of the earth element, and he was stunned by such power. The stone spear stuck into the side of the beast and immediately crumbled. A painful howl sounded, but the enemy was still breathing, and Keed, observing the aftermath, tried to assess the damage. It became clear. This strength was not enough to end the fight. The wounded wolf growled but did not retreat. The others also froze in place. Watching carefully, their attack slowed them down but did not stop them, and this gave the boy a few precious seconds to gather himself and prepare for the next assault. Meanwhile, 2 warriors rushed forward, meeting the rest of the dogs. One shouted, "Hit the biggest one," the other picked up his order. The huge wolf roared and jumped, but their spears and swords clashed at the same moment, and metal collided with claws in a dazzling flash. The two warriors acted in unison. One struck with a spear, the other with a sword. The wolf lunged forward, but both hit precisely and felled the beast. The fight was short but fierce, and the power of their blows was truly impressive. When the battle subsided, Keed approached closer, looking at the fallen dogs. One of the men thanked him for the help, the others looked closely. They noticed that the boy did not look like a traveler. Where did he come from? The question hung in the air. Keed answered calmly that he woke up in the forest and did not remember how he got here. He decided not to reveal the truth and stuck to this version. His voice was steady, and his gaze confident, and this impressed the listeners. One of the warriors asked in surprise if monsters had attacked him. He looked unharmed. Keed replied that everything was fine. An old man got out of the cart and introduced himself as the merchant Korak. He sincerely thanked the boy and asked if he really saved them. The old man tried to remember his name but mixed it up and said, Susu. The companions corrected him, Keed. The merchant apologized for the confusion and kindly continued the conversation, and the tension gradually melted, turning into friendly interest. The trader inquired if Keed had money or documents, and recalling his memory loss, sincerely offered help. The boy replied that he had nothing and was forced to honestly admit his helplessness. The merchant assumed that the boy might have lost his belongings in the forest. Without identification, he would not be allowed into the city, so Korak extended some coins as a deposit for the guild, and Keed gratefully accepted the shiny silver coins, not believing in such selfless generosity. Keed examined the coins and timidly asked if it was silver. The merchant took this as doubt and asked if the amount was sufficient. The boy quickly explained that he meant nothing bad, and one of the warriors smiled and joked that he had even forgotten the local currency. A girl named Salier joined the conversation. She introduced herself as the guild receptionist of Exiled, smiled, and said the boy could simply be called Sali. Then she asked Korak to take Keed to the city because she did not want to leave him alone, and he gladly agreed. When the cart moved on, Sali began explaining the situation. They were on a forest road near the city of Ain, and Keed listened attentively, clinging to the words, trying to piece everything together and organize what he heard in his mind to understand this new world. The carriage creaked through the forest south of the city of Ain. Monsters often appeared here, so the journeys were dangerous, and Sali and Korak traveled with a guard. On the map, he saw roads and the city, which explained their presence here. Sali told about the currency of this world. The cheapest coin was iron, then copper, silver, gold, and large gold. One iron coin equaled 10 yen, and after hearing this, Keed thanked the girl and memorized the order of the coins. Sitting next to Korak, he looked with interest at the cart filled with goods and not understanding why the merchant chose a regular wagon instead of a magical storage. The boy directly asked if it would not be more convenient to have a storage container. The merchant replied that magical storages could only be used by those who have a natural talent for magic. There were few such people. They mostly served the army or aristocrats. Hiring them was too expensive, so ordinary merchants managed with wagons, and Keed realized that he himself probably possessed this ability. Suddenly, the boy remembered that the skill, information analysis, could hide his parameters and protect him from unnecessary attention. So he decided to conceal his rare abilities to appear as an ordinary person and live safely among others. Soon the caravan approached the city gates. Armed guards stood on both sides. A sign with the inscription Ain hung above the arch, and Korak, Sali, and Keed approached the entrance. The journey's goal was finally reached. At the gates, one of the guards sleepily muttered to show documents. Keed was confused because he had no identification. Sali explained that he lost it in the forest, and another guard said that then a deposit must be made on silver coin and pointed to a strange device. Keed, curious, could not resist and asked about the magical device in the wall. Sali calmly explained that it identifies the person who touches it and helps detect criminals, and the guard carefully watched them as they approached the device. Keed touched the magical device and repeated the word bandits in his mind. Sali explained that the deposit would be returned after receiving the guild card and reminded that Korak had already given him money for registration. The boy thanked her, noticing her kindness, and she smiled and nodded, "Follow me." The device lit up, showing Keed's name, race, level, and gender. He was surprised to see that he understood all the inscriptions and realized this was the effect of the skill, full mastery of the language of another world. So thanks to it, he communicated with Sali without difficulty. The guard checked the data. Everything was normal. Suddenly, one of the guards flinched upon seeing Keed's surname, a thing peculiar only to the nobility. Instantly, he changed, apologized, and respectfully bowed his head. Others, even Sali, did not understand the reasons, and Keed stood confused, not realizing what caused such a reaction. He instantly understood. It was about the surname, and probably only nobles had the right to it. Recalling that Sally and Carrick were called only by their first names, he realized with horror that he had inadvertently revealed himself as an aristocrat. And at that moment, someone activated an identification spell to check everything. Data of Carrick and Sally appeared on the screen: age, race, skills, but no surnames. This confirmed Keed's suspicion. One of the guards asked to show his status again. The boy held his breath, preparing for the worst, and the air around filled with anxiety. This time his surname suddenly disappeared from the panel. The guard raised his eyebrows in surprise, but noticed nothing suspicious. Keed discreetly used information analysis to hide extra data, apologized, pretending to be confused, and decided to be more careful in the future. Finally, Keed arrived at the Adventurers Guild building in the city of Ain, massive wooden doors, and the rumble inside enveloped a sense of power and movement. And inside warriors bustled, among whom a lizardman in armor stood out. One of the staff greeted them and invited them to register. Sally sincerely thanked Keed for his help and explained how everything would proceed. After registration, he would receive a guild card and ID allowing him to take quests. The fee was 3 silver coins. To her question, the boy confidently answered, yes, and registration began at the counter. Sally placed a magical box on the table and asked Keed to touch it. She explained that the device worked the same way as the one near the city gates. The boy smiled, imagining how he would now earn a living, and the silver coins already lay nearby, ready for payment. As soon as he touched the box, the screen displayed a full list of skills. Sally first thanked him, but looking at the data, froze. The interface showed more than the previous one. Keed noticed her surprise and asked if everything was okay, and she quickly replied that all was well, hiding her confusion. The girl handed him the guild card and explained its content. It had his name, race, gender, and ranked the lowest level G, the highest S. Keed listened attentively, clutching the card in his hands, and Sally emphasized, "The future of every adventurer depends on the rank." She continued, and her voice became clear. The rank increases by completing quests and victories over monsters. Starting from D, an exam must be passed, although sometimes there are exceptions. If a hero is inactive for a long time, their rating decreases. Sally spoke warmly but confidently so that he would remember everything important. She clarified once again. The ranking system updates automatically. Everything depends on the participants' actions. One must protect their reputation, because every defeat or violation can lower it, and the boy listened attentively, trying to catch all the details. Then Sally showed the map. The 4th row showed how many quests were completed, and the 5th how many monsters were killed. All data updated immediately after completing tasks, and Keed held the map, thoughtfully watching how his new life was gaining clear boundaries. He learned with shock about duels and that bandits are considered monsters. Sally explained that their destruction is not punished, and even if a bandit dies in a duel by mutual consent, the winner does not lose status. This rule seemed harsh but fair. The girl strictly emphasized that forging a guild card is impossible. Any fake would be noticed immediately, and the punishment for this is death. Inside, Keed shuddered, but outwardly remained calm, and when she asked if he had questions, he only briefly replied that he understood everything. After that, Sally solemnly announced that Keed officially became an adventurer, wished him to act responsibly and carefully. The boy thanked her for the care, said goodbye and left, and Sally watched him for a long time, thoughtful and smiling. When he left, one of the guild employees joked that Sally hadn't spoken so warmly to anyone for a long time, and she only blushed and asked her colleague not to make things up, pretending indifference, although her face betrayed a warm glow. Being alone, Sally quietly admitted to herself that she had long been waiting for such a man. From the very first glance, she felt Keed was unlike the others, and her intuition whispered, "He is not from here, he is from another world." She remembered how he listened so attentively, as if every word was a treasure, and how seriously he took everything said. His natural talent for magic and martial arts fascinated her, and the girl felt that fate had brought her someone special. Perhaps he was the one she had been waiting for all her life. Meanwhile, Keed settled in the inn recommended to him by the guard near the gates. Collapsing on the bed, he felt tired not physically, but from everything that had happened. Reviewing his inventory, he was relieved to see that all items were displayed correctly, even that strange herb found in the forest. Lying down, he thought about the fight with the green dogs and realized he had acted recklessly. He could have died. Recalling the duels and bandits, he decided to be more careful and plan every step in the future. With the first rays of the sun, the boy stood by the window and looked into the distance. Thinking about the future, would he be able to survive in this world where danger lurked around every corner? Fear rose in his chest, intertwined with determination. Hunger crept up on Keed, and he caught the smell of fresh food. He went outside, found an establishment, and went inside, where a smiling waitress immediately greeted him. He found himself in a cafe where elf maids in maid outfits greeted him. At first, Keed froze in surprise, not believing his eyes, until one of them politely asked if he had come for breakfast. Smiling, the boy sat down at the table and asked for the menu until the waitress showed that it was already lying in front of him. He forgot about his worries, enjoyed the atmosphere, and for the first time sincerely accepted the new reality. After a hearty breakfast, Keed stretched, enjoying every movement. The food was wonderful and his mood instantly lifted. He decided to go to the guild to choose his first quests. Stepping onto the street, the hero headed to the guild, thinking that for future journeys he would need equipment and money, while the world around seemed both unfamiliar and full of possibilities. But soon he realized he was lost. He found himself in an empty, eerie alley where even the wind seemed wary. To get out, Keed decided to knock on the nearest door and ask for directions. After knocking, he politely asked for help, but instead heard a rough male voice behind the door. Keed explained that he was simply lost, but the owner was not quick to trust the stranger, and the tension in the air grew. The merchant shouted that this was a weapons shop, and if the boy was not going to buy anything, he should leave. Keed silently glanced around the room, where swords, spears, and shields gleamed in the lamplight. He noticed the owner's unfriendliness, but firmly assured that he really wanted to buy a weapon that was exactly why he had come. And the shopkeeper immediately, after looking closely and somewhat distrustfully, asked about his budget. Keed said he only had 1,300 bodhi and planned to earn more. The merchant snorted, "For that money you can't even buy a knife," and he couldn't believe that a young man with such a physique and fighting talent had such a meager amount. The hero explained that he found himself in the forest without memory and without money, but somehow managed to earn. The shopkeeper, looking closely at his confident movements, said that only the strong survive among monster sand, immediately added, "The buyer's past does not concern him." The blacksmith said sternly that he would not sell equipment to those who do not know how to use it, and asked not to tell anyone about his shop. Assessing the traveler's posture, he offered to craft a sword and shield for a certain fee and admitted that it was precisely because of his potential that he did not drive him away immediately. Keed promised to return when he had money. The blacksmith briefly said, "Don't die rude," but those words felt like sincere care, and before leaving he asked to be shown the way to the guild. Keed approached the guild building and politely greeted Sally, who was carrying a stack of papers. When he asked if he could take a task, the girl smiled and suggested he come closer so she could explain everything on the spot. She led him to the notice board and explained. He needed to choose a task of his level and submit it at the counter, and Keed, having rank G, could only take simple assignments gathering herbs or helping with cargo. The boy chose a quest to gather herbs, and Sally explained that it was about zanana, a plant used to stop bleeding. Currently, the guild was short of it, so they paid 30 bodies for each branch. Keed was surprised and asked if zanana was really that rare. Sally explained that the herb itself was common, but a poisonous variety grew nearby, so collecting a lot was difficult. Most found it by accident. Opening his inventory, the boy showed a plant he had found earlier and asked if it was the one. Sally immediately recognized zanana and confirmed, and Keed, thanking her, decided to search for the herb where he had once awakened. Returning to the forest, he searched for hours for the herb, but in vain. Tired, he sat down on the ground and felt that he still had not collected a single suitable sample. Reviewing what he had gathered, Keed realized that there were poisonous plants among them. The poison was weak, it could only make one a little dizzy, so he decided not to throw them away immediately. The boy tried to activate the skill information analysis to find the needed herbs, imagining it as his own radar, but at first, nothing worked. When he took a sample in his hands, a shining symbol suddenly flashed before his eyes, and Keed understood. This was zanana, and this mark appeared only when he saw it with his own eyes. He tried again and activated the skill. Dozens of symbols instantly flashed around, and the boy rejoiced. Now he could quickly gather the required amount of herbs. Returning, he placed a full basket of plants before Sally. She glanced at it in surprise and asked if he had confused them with poisonous ones, and Keed confidently replied that he had checked each sample with the evaluation skill. He added that all the stems were longer than 15 centimeters, as required by the task. Sally began to check, and the magical device suddenly responded to the collected plants, confirming their authenticity. As soon as Sally heard about the appraisal skill, she became wary he hadn't had it before. She suspiciously asked how he managed to gather so much. Keed tried to explain, but sounded uncertain, and the air filled with tension. He insisted that he really had this skill, it just wasn't visible in the status. It was thanks to it that he completed the task, and the girl listened with distrust, but felt that the boy was not lying. Finally, Sally sighed deeply and admitted she had exaggerated. She rewrote the report and calculated his payment 6,090 bodhi, and Keed smiled with relief, feeling he had avoided unnecessary suspicion. The next day he came again to the blacksmith for the shield he ordered. He greeted him and directly said why he came. The master was initially reserved, then barked, "Less talk, come in." While the boy inspected the workshop, the blacksmith continued forging. Keed noticed the inscription Dovro on the steel plate and guessed it was the master's name. He was focused on finishing the work, sparks flying around. When everything was ready, Dovro asked if the boy brought the money. Keed confirmed and recalled that the magical shield would come in handy. And the master, surprised at how quickly the youth returned, barely smiled. Learning about the boy's talent for magic, the blacksmith asked if he needed a staff, but a remark was made. With his combat skills, it's better to focus on the sword because a future swordsman is already visible in him. The blacksmith explained that a mage without a staff is rare. Without it, it's hard to concentrate energy in motion, and without a special tool, the speed of spells sharply drops, so most wizards are defenseless without it. Keed thought aloud. The power of magic doesn't change, but without acceleration it's hard to hit. He realized that the staff really adds speed and accuracy, so he would definitely buy one someday. But for now, he decided not to rush. The blacksmith reminded him of this and warned that even the most talented can die from carelessness. The conversation returned to the shield. The master handed over one of the finished products and asked him to try it on. The boy felt a pleasant weight in his hands and gratefully thought that this rough man was actually very humane. One of the shields turned out to be perfect in balance and size. The blacksmith just glanced and immediately picked the best option, and Keed was amazed at how accurately he determined his needs from just one look. The blacksmith, satisfied with the result, smiled and asked the client's opinion. Keed examined the shield he had just received and admitted. It really looked worthy reliable, as if made just for him. When the boy first gripped the shield in his hands, he felt as if the shield became part of his body, and Keed mentally noted that Master Dovro was truly skilled at his craft. With burning curiosity, he began asking about the sword forging process, especially about metal hardening, but the blacksmith never understood what exactly he meant. Keed explained the principle. The metal needs to be heated after strikes, then quickly cooled. The blacksmith tried the method, but the shape of the blank warped. However, he was amazed at how hard the metal became. Dovro thought that if after weaker heating the cooling was slower, the material might instead become soft. The master admitted he did not know where the boy got such knowledge, but it intrigued him greatly. He decided to close the forge for 2 days and promised, if the sword experiment succeeded, he would give it for free. He'd watched the blacksmith leave and thought, although the service was rough, Dovro showed true passion for the craft, so he decided to ignore the harshness. The next day, the boy set out through the city to seek the real life of adventurers. He felt awkward using the evaluation on people, but curiosity prevailed. He wanted to learn more. The analysis showed the level of magic in mages and ordinary warriors was almost the same, and rare skills, talent for magic, or talent for combat were almost non-existent. He glanced over the market stalls, nothing special, except for magical meat for sale. Eventually, he bought a pie filled with green wolf meat and ate it on the go. He'd noticed that in this world clothes could be washed with plain water, and recalling his previous world, he smiled sadly. What he missed most was a hot bath. He got so absorbed in gathering herbs that he did not notice it had gotten dark. Realizing evening had come, the boy decided to return to the city. Suddenly, a green wolf leapt at him from above. Keed dodged and prepared for battle, waiting for the right moment to counterattack. He launched a fireball at the enemy, but noticed several more wolvesh was deep in the forest, and the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. The beasts began to surround him, growling from all sides, and Keed, quickly assessing the situation, instantly realized that he was in an extremely disadvantageous position. He created a fireball again, felt himself rise to a new level during it, and when the flames dispersed, enemies remained, although his gut whispered that one was still hiding. In an instant, a wolf jumped down from the tree and lunged straight at him. Keed barely managed to react, realizing it was a sudden and planned attack. The monster knocked him off his feet. The boy fell, felt pain, and gritting his teeth, tried to concentrate to cast a new spell. The image of magic was already forming in his mind. He activated the spell Stone Spear. Several sharp stone spikes instantly grew from the ground, piercing the wolves from different sides, and powerful magic destroyed most of the enemies. One beast died, but the rest survived and surrounded him again. Keed admitted his mistake, acted too recklessly, and almost paid with his life. Later, he returned to the city with a sack filled with collected plants and shocked everyone. Taking the herbs, the girl only sighed. "I am starting to stop looking for logic in him." Keed calmly explained that he had been gathering zanana all day. Went too far, encountered wolves, but defeated them with magic. Sally gasped in shock. hearing that he had fought several green wolves on his own. She could not understand how a mage could possibly stand against monsters without any help. The boy replied that he was shielding himself with a shield and simultaneously casting spells. The girl noted that such concentration is impossible for a novice. This is the level of an experienced mage warrior. She suggested calling a healer or giving a potion, but Keed assured that he was not wounded. Instead, he became interested in restorative spells and decided to learn more about them. The hero pondered his stats. His mana exceeded 2,000 and recovered insanely fast, so he decided to test stronger spells and find a way to compensate for weak sensitivity. A goal matured in his mind to become a magical swordsman, to combine the power of magic and the sword, relying on his own cheat ability. The next day, Keed went to the forest he wanted to train and finally unravel the nature of his magic. So he decided to develop search magic to better sense space. The boy began experimenting with the direction of energy, imagining a magical stream bursting from his palm and stretching to a tree. Concentrating was incredibly difficult, and suddenly he managed to direct the energy straight to the target. The boy watched in amazement as a visible wave of power began to form in the air. Magic manifested in space for the first time by his own will. The boy even held his breath in excitement when the magic allowed him to feel the roughness of the tree bark, and he decided to expand the spell's effect to increase the radius to test its limits. But when the magic covered too large an area, an avalanche of information flooded his brain. The data stream was excessive. He lost control and felt his mind was about to explode. He'd barely stood on his feet, his face pale from exhaustion. He realized that such a spell was unsuitable for battle. Too much unnecessary information, and concentration breaks down in seconds. He mulled over why the system was overloaded and concluded the spell lacked a clear query. The boy decided to try again, applying information analysis as a filter to narrow the search for what was needed. When he cast the magic a second time, a window with a round map suddenly appeared before his eyes. It showed only objects within a certain radius. Keed noticed that the form of magic manifestation itself had changed, and he thought, if you overlay several maps, you can get more complete data. With joy, he exclaimed that he had succeeded. He created a simplified magical radar. Before him shone a round map showing surrounding objects and confirming that the new spell had worked. Testing a new skill, the hero noticed. The perception radius reached 50 meters. Maintaining magic required no expenses, so now no one could catch him off guard. The spell was named Perception Magic. Remembering that the blacksmith promised to give the sword in 3 days, Keed decided to visit him, and on the way he could not take his thoughts off the mysterious process of metal hardening that constantly attracted him. Approaching the forge, the boy greeted and asked, "Is the sword ready?" Dovro, yawning tiredly, confirmed everything was finished. Keed was surprised by the hardness of the metal. He thought that the blacksmith took steel, not the softer wrought iron he used before, and this hardness of the blade greatly impressed him. Dovro proudly reported that he finished the sword yesterday and considers it one of his best works, so he advised to use it until the hero finds a Class B material. Keed hesitated a little but accepted the sword. Although he had never wielded a weapon, he took it confidently. The cold metal lay in his hand naturally, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. Making a trial swing, he did not notice how his body itself caught the movement. The strike was smooth and precise, and even he was surprised. The blacksmith watched with interest. The master, crossing his arms, said that for a beginner he moves too skillfully, probably had held a sword before. Keed smiled, realizing how useful his combat skills turned out to be. The boy hesitated, whether to keep such a convenient sword or not, but Dovro assured him it was a trifle. Now he could make even better samples. Keed wondered if he was sharing his experience too generously. He smiled and calmly said that he did not mind. His knowledge-spreading techniques are created for use, not for hiding, so he essentially had nothing to lose. The blacksmith asked with interest if the boy did not wear armor because he was a mage. Keed nodded, and added that if he had to choose, he would prefer light armor so as not to restrict movement. Suddenly he remembered that he had so far been satisfied only with a shield, and realized with horror he had completely forgotten about body protection. So Dovro advised him to contact a leather master and order light armor. Koval explained that he only deals with metal himself, but can recommend an acquaintance who is a master of leather goods. Keed became interested. Maybe he would meet another dwarf. In the shop, a girl approached him friendly and immediately understood that he was a novice. Keed said he came on Dovro's recommendation and needed armor, and she did not hide her surprise that such an experienced blacksmith referred him. The girl immediately recognized Dovro's work in the sword and asked for permission to examine it. She easily assessed the blade, behaving confidently and professionally, and Keed noticed her attention to detail. She tested the sword. With one movement she cut through an object and exclaimed excitedly. The boy was stunned by such boldness, but noticing that no one else was in the workshop, he realized she was the master herself. The smiling girl confirmed the blade was indeed from Dovro's forge. She said enthusiastically that she was seeing such quality for the first time. Keed understood this was the leatherworker the blacksmith had mentioned. She said that a good sword requires appropriate armor and offered to make custom armor. The boy asked interestedly about materials, and the master replied that she could work with any available resource. Keed noticed green wolf leather, and the girl explained it has weak protection and easily catches fire. So due to limited choice, they settled on durable gargan leather. She said that her shop was for novices, so she does not use expensive materials. The boy was surprised why she spoke about this so proudly. He noticed armor on a mannequin and asked if it was for sale. The master explained that it was an experimental model that can activate magical protection using the owner's mana, but due to excessive consumption, no one buys it. Keed was glad such armor would suit him perfectly. His mana regenerated incredibly fast. The girl confirmed that now these armors only decorate the hall, and the boy activated information analysis to study the characteristics. From the analysis, he learned that the armor consumes 20 units of mana per hour. For him, this was trivial. His energy reserve allowed him to use it without any restrictions, while ordinary adventurers could only dream of such luxury. He asked how much the armor cost and what level of protection it had. The master replied that in strength it was equal to gargan leather, so the price would be the same. The boy said that he would just try the armor despite her warning. He added that if the result did not satisfy him, he would switch to ordinary leather, and a relieved gleam appeared in her eyes. She approved his determination. After taking measurements, the craftswoman informed that the armor would be ready the next evening when the evening bell rang. Keed agreed, thanked her, and was already eagerly awaiting the result. Then he asked if she sold anything besides armor and said he was looking for a magic staff. The girl advised him to go to the magic shop nearby. No sooner had he mentioned it than a sorceress suddenly appeared out of thin air. Her sudden arrival surprised every Oneth craftswoman got angry because the sorceress had settled in her shop without permission. Keed froze in amazement. Before him stood a real mage, like a classic wizard in a robe with a playful smile, and her presence seemed calm and powerful at the same time. She confirmed that she sold magical items and immediately took his hand, inviting him to her store. Upon hearing that he came on Dovro's recommendation, the sorceress smiled. The blacksmith's name seemed to be known by everyone. The shopkeeper led the boy into a spacious hall with a high ceiling, where under it floated shining crystal lamps as if in the air, and Keed looked around as if enchanted. The magical atmosphere was majestic. The woman approached the showcase with staffs and asked which one interested him, while Keed curiously scanned dozens of models from simple to carved and did not know what to choose. The mage explained, "The length of the staff determines the speed of magic. The longer it is, the faster the spell is cast, but the harder it is to control the energy, so one must find a fine balance between power and convenience." She showed a short staff, only 60 centimeters, and noted that although it was slow, it was convenient in narrow dungeons. Keed agreed that it was a practical option for close combat. Smiling, he jokingly asked if she had a staff that tripled the speed of magic. The seller laughed and explained that such a tiny one, only 20 centimeters, would be more of a toy than a weapon. The boy explained that he fought with a sword and shield, so he asked for a staff that would not interfere in battle. His magic was already quite fast, but triple acceleration would make it perfect. The hero's words threw the merchant off balance, but she still agreed to make the staff by tomorrow, warning that she would not be responsible if the item turned out to be useless. Keed only smiled for him. It was important to get exactly such a staff, even an experimental one, and he remembered that in this world magical swordsmen are rare, as the combination of strength and concentration is not given to everyone. When he suggested simply cutting off part of the staff to make it lighter, the sorceress burst out laughing. Keed beamed with joy. His equipment was finally coming together, although he did not understand all the magical subtleties. The next day he went to the guild to talk about a rank promotion, and the clerk confirmed that his contribution was already sufficient to move to the next level. At the same time, she explained simply, the first promotion would only come after completing one simple task, and Keed immediately understood this was part of the experience system that forms adventurers' reputations. Scrolling through the quest list, he snorted for G rank. There were only minor tasks, cleaning up trash, carrying loads, or routine work, and the boy pondered what to choose. In the end, he chose a task to transport iron, a rare and unpopular quest. The clerk was surprised, but still confirmed that technically it was suitable for promotion. Sally, who was standing nearby, tried to dissuade him, saying that this job was unprofitable. However, Keed assured her that he could handle it. He had a spatial inventory. From the conversation, he learned that the capacity of the spatial storage depends on how much mana was present during its opening and use, and the clerk explained how the number of slots is calculated. The boy suddenly realized the number of cells equals his initial mana reserve, and each of them has its own weight limit. The iron quest seemed like a great opportunity to test this. In the field, Keed raced alongside a fluffy creature, running at a speed of over 20 kilometers per hour. He marveled at his endurance and joked cheerfully that in the old world he would have outrun Olympians. After leveling up, he could now run all day without stopping. Reaching the village, the boy approached the gatekeeper, told him about the guild task, and showed the map. The man pointed to a huge pile of iron ore and said, "Take as much as you can carry." And Keed nodded and immediately got to work, which greatly surprised the observer. Looking at the fragile young man, the worker doubted whether he could endure it at all. But as soon as the boy began to collect the ore, his movements became precise, and his gaze focused, and the person was filled with a premonition of something unusual. Keed calmly reported that he had loaded 1.5 tons of ore. The worker confusedly repeated that usually such boxes hold no more than 200 kilograms. Impressed, the man smiled and offered help in the future, saying that with such talent he would be useful. Keed agreed, but admitted that he had not yet decided how long he would stay in the city. The boy said that he had filled only one slot in the storage. The worker, not believing what he heard, asked if more could fit there, and Keed confirmed yes and much more. Smiling, he added that he still had over 1,000 free cells. The worker froze with his mouth open and asked if he was the embodiment of the storage itself, and Keed laughed and replied that for now he remained an ordinary person. Workers at the processing plant watched in amazement as Keed brought a mountain of ore. He calmly reported that he brought only what he could carry, about 10 tons, and the heavy wagons creaked, and everyone around was silent from shock. One of the workers, asking how many trips the boy had made, almost fainted when he learned that he had brought it all at once. Keed added that he could have brought more but left space for future deliveries. After delivering the ore, Keed was promoted to rank F. The merchant, upon learning this, simply froze in amazement, and the boy tried on a shortened staff despite doubts. It fit perfectly in his hand. Keed thanked the craftswoman and said that this equipment was more than enough. He felt confident and ready for new challenges, and the girl looked at him with a slight smile. The girls quietly watched and smiled. The short staff seemed surprisingly cute. In a moment, Keed dashed forward at a crazy speed, ready to test everything in real combat. He decided to test the equipment in real conditions and headed deep into the forest. The radar signaled movement. The boy tensed and rushed to the target, his heart pounding with the anticipation of battle. Before him appeared a huge pack of green wolves, and Keed became worried there were more of them than he could overcome. Counting about 500, he realized if he fled, he would lead them straight to the city. Seeing no other way out, the boy decided to fight, took out a potion of accelerated mana recovery, which he had bought in advance, and drank it, feeling his strength rapidly returning. Turning on the magical armor, he felt, for ordinary mages it would be useless, but for him perfect. The wolves were approaching, and he took a fighting stance, gripping his sword and staff. When the enemies came closer, Keed cast the spell Stone Spear. The earth split open, and sharp blade-like spears burst out, piercing the wolves and scattering their ranks. He noticed with satisfaction that the spell worked perfectly. Looking at the chaos, he recalled his own training when he was learning to control magic, and proudly realized how far he had come. Keed was puzzling over the mechanics of spell enhancement. Even when pouring 10 times more mana, the radius of the strike did not increase proportionally. Power could be increased, but not faster than 10 units per second. The hero activated Fireball. A series of flashes surged into the crowd. Flames covered the enemies, creating a wall of explosions, and he decided to use multiple magic to even the odds. When the smoke cleared, only black, charred bodies of wolves remained on the field. The combat system confirmed the victory with a quiet, short signal. The boy stood at a distance and could not believe the scale of what he had seen. But the rest of the beasts did not retreat. They kept advancing, and Keed opened fire again, simultaneously retreating and keeping a safe distance. He sharply turned and released a new series of fireballs, turning the battlefield into hell. The explosions scattered the attackers, forcing the rest to retreat howling. Standing amid the smoky space, the hero watched as the remains of the enemies dissolved. The behavior of the wolves seemed simple and instinctive to him, without strategy, only bare, pure aggression. He looked at the charred ground beneath his feet and shuddered with surprise. The battle had lasted only 3 minutes. His magic was becoming increasingly precise, and his reaction lightning fast. Satisfied with himself, Keed reviewed the updated parameters. His intellect and agility had jumped to high levels, and the list of skills was supplemented by several types of magic only 3 minutes, and so much progress. Counting the bodies, he found that he had destroyed 513 wolves, and the boy was surprised was this a normal phenomenon. Gathering trophies, he was about to leave when heavy breathing was heard behind him. From the shadow emerged a giant creature covered with thick, scaly armor. The ground shook under its steps, and the dull roar made the air vibrate. Later, when Keed proudly told Solly that he had defeated over 500 wolves, she simply did not believe it. Such huge packs are extremely rare, so she asked where exactly he had found them. The boy calmly replied that he had come across them 15 minutes after entering the forest. Solly sighed with relief. He was alive and offered to buy 100 wolf carcasses, to which he agreed without hesitation. Later, Keed visited the forge to hand over the sword and shield for repair, and the blacksmith only glanced at the scratches immediately understood. These were traces of a battle with green wolves that lasted several days in a row. The blacksmith carefully examined the equipment. The shield was scratched by claws, the sword worn from numerous strikes, and he concluded that the boy had defeated hundreds of enemies. He'd assumed that he had become better only due to the increase in characteristics, but the master disagreed. Dovro admitted that at first he had underestimated him, but now he was sincerely impressed by his development. After finishing the repair, the blacksmith said that he had restored only the sword the shield was still holding up. He wanted to advise replacing the weapon but changed his mind, and Keed thanked him, not hiding his surprise. The master explained that his sword, although strong, was still iron and therefore inferior to rare metals, so he advised always having a spare blade. The boy asked how much a sword made from dragon material would cost. Dovro only smiled. The price starts at 4 billion bodies, since suitable parts of a dragon almost do not exist. The blacksmith added that dragons are so rare that they are considered legendary creatures, and their appearance can wipe entire states off the face of the earth and sow chaos in the world. He'd asked what material would be suitable for a sword if dragon metal was too expensive. Dovro replied that a great alternative was metal lizard, a rank B creature covered with armor as hard as steel. The blacksmith explained, the metal lizard's skin is used for forging swords. It is extremely durable. These creatures are so dangerous that ordinary warriors have no chance, and if one appeared near a small town without strong mages, there would be real panic. He'd guessed that he would hardly meet such a monster soon, but promised himself to try to defeat it someday. Dovro added, metal lizards even surpass dragons in physical defense, and a sword made from their material costs at least 5 million bodies. The next day, Keed approached the guild building and found it closed. An urgent notice was hanging on the board, asking all fighters to gather near the forest gates. Many adventurers had already gathered near the gate. Keed approached Solly to find out what was happening. She looked at him in surprise and immediately called him by name, explaining what had happened. Solly said that after his words about the green wolves, the guild sent scouts who discovered a large number of monsters approaching the city, and it was thanks to Keed's warning that they managed to prepare the defense. Fighters gathered near the gates and discussed the upcoming attack. Keed realized there would be many enemies and sighed with relief. It was good they learned about the attack in advance, otherwise the city could have been wiped off the face of the earth. Solly warned that among the attackers were monsters with powerful battering rams, and the gates themselves would not hold. She asked Keed to join the front line and promised a reward to everyone who took part in the battle. The boy wavered for a moment in doubt. He was just a novice. The girl smiled and said the monsters here were weak, and he was one of the strongest in the guild. Keed was surprised at how weak the local defense turned out to be. He agreed to help. There was no other way. Solly thanked him and said he would become a key figure in the defense, and one of the soldiers added that their squad was ready to go out with him. Suddenly, Keed abruptly sprang up and ran toward the forest. Everyone, even Solly, froze confused, not understanding his action. The girl shouted his name, but he had already disappeared among the trees. Running forward, the boy thought he could not just stand aside. It seemed to him this world had already become his home, and he decided that this battle was an opportunity to gain experience and not let the enemies break into the city. Keed knew, even with the elixir, his mana was not limitless. He calculated that full power would last only about 20 minutes, so he decided to use his strength carefully. The plan was simple. He would meet those nearby with a sword and strike the distant ones with spells. When the wolves began to surround him, he took a deep breath and prepared for the attack. After the recent level up, the boy felt strong and confident. But suddenly a giant monster burst out of the thickets aboard the size of a house, and Keed turned pale, realizing that before him was a new, much more dangerous enemy. He immediately summoned the stone spear and unleashed a series of blows on the beast, but it did not even stop. Even several attacks only slightly slowed it down. The monster was rushing forward, tearing the ground beneath it. The boy activated identification and saw Gorgon, a monster with colossal strength but almost no magic, and at that moment he understood that it was exactly such creatures Solly had warned about. 7 spells barely touched it, its health dropped by only a third, and suddenly HP fell to 0. Keed was surprised maybe it was a critical hit, although he himself did not believe that it really defeated him. Looking around, the boy noticed strange behavior of other creatures. They were running not towards him, but past, all in one direction as if fleeing from someone stronger. Keed decided to figure it out. Climbing higher up the slope, he noticed many tracks of animals running away. Anxiety grew, such orderliness could not be accidental. Moving forward, he was convinced. The monsters were really fleeing, but from whom? What could have scared even the wolves and gorgons? Dark guesses began to pour into his mind. And then before him appeared a giant creature covered with metal scales. It moved swiftly and heavily. The ground trembled under each step. It was a metal lizard. Keed instantly recognized the monster that Dovro had once spoken about, and it immediately became clear it was this creature that made all the monsters flee, and its armor shone, reflecting even the flickers of flame. The boy immediately understood fighting alone would be suicide. He was about to retreat and inform the guild, but suddenly something stirred in the forest, and he instantly became alert. The metal lizard roared angrily and dashed after, and Keed didn't even have time to prepare. The beast's speed exceeded human capabilities. He rushed to run, but the monster rapidly closed the distance, and the boy realized physical attacks were powerless, and even the stone spear wouldn't pierce such armor. Gathering his thoughts, he focused and began accumulating mana energy gathered within him for a minute. Then he cast the spell Great Fireball, the most powerful available to him. The fire sphere hit the target directly, but when the smoke cleared, the beast stood unharmed. Keed froze in shock. Even this magic had no effect. The metal lizard lunged forward, and with a powerful blow threw the boy backward. The force was such that he didn't even have time to raise his shield. The blow only grazed his leg, but the bone cracked. Keed, gritting his teeth, activated healing magic. A direct attack would have killed him instantly, and he realized he must not let this monster reach the city. Keed firmly declared that he would definitely defeat the enemy. Realizing he had no spell that could pierce the armor, he decided to create a new one based on the same principle by which he once mastered earth magic. The boy raised his hands and tried to activate the created spell, but nothing happened. He was confused and surprised. Perhaps some special condition was needed besides imagination. Sweat covered his forehead, but he was not going to retreat. Realizing that usual spells were powerless, he clung to a single thought. Despite the danger, Keed decided to accumulate special magic to deliver a more powerful strike. The boy thoughtfully bit his lip. The metal lizard's armor was like tank armor, and only colossal pressure could pierce it, so he recalled and chose the technique Magic Pressure 3 inches, which he once learned during training. Keed decided to risk everything and poured the remaining mana into one spell. To complete it, he had to hold out for 15 minutes, dodging the monster's tail strikes. Thanks to his combat instinct, he seemed to read the attack trajectories and managed to dodge. But the pain still pierced his body. Every movement required superhuman concentration. 15 minutes passed. Keed finished preparing, took a deep breath, and focused on finding a weak spot in the armor until his gaze fell on the area on the back that the beast rarely exposed to blows. Gathering his willpower, he lunged forward. His target was the back, the most vulnerable point. A step, a jump, and he was right behind the monster. With a shout, Keed unleashed magic, pouring all his remaining strength into it. This was the last chance. The final blow meant to decide the fate of the battle. The spell hit the target precisely. The air tore from the pressure explosion. A hole formed in the lizard's body, and from it burst a bright glow of energy that engulfed the monster. The boy gritted his teeth and watched the enemy's reaction intently. His heart pounded. Did it work? Had he finally managed to break through that unbreakable armor? The metal lizard roared in pain. Its body convulsively bent, and Keed stood, barely breathing, trying to understand if this was the end. He watched as the monster slowly fell, the armor cracking, and a smile touched his lips. He did it. Incredible, but he won. The battle was over. Walking through the forest, the boy carefully scanned the area with a radar. All the monsters the lizard had driven away had already retreated. The area was clear. He had just thought about his comrades when he heard Solly's voice. She was running toward him, shouting with relief. He'd calmly asked why she thought he could have died. The girl, gasping, exclaimed that he had disappeared even though all the enemies had already retreated, and reproached him for recklessness. She shouted, barely holding back tears. Her voice trembled with anger and fear. Keed bowed his head, sincerely apologized, and was surprised himself at how much she cared. Solly reproachfully said that he had taken her order too literally and almost died. Keed tried to justify himself, but eventually admitted she really had told him to act on the front line. When she asked what he had been doing while everyone was retreating, the boy calmly replied that he was scouting the area he had come across the metal lizard. His words stunned the girl. She was already about to call the mages, considering that creature too dangerous, but Keed simply said that he had already defeated it. The boy smiled and explained it was his victory that made the rest of the monsters flee. Sally could not believe her ears. Suddenly she remembered that he combined sword and magic and understood how it was possible, then asked if he possessed wind magic, a question that clearly embarrassed Keed. Sally explained, to destroy such a monster, usually a group of rank, mages is needed. They lift the lizard into the air and burn it from the inside, so she sincerely wanted to know how he managed to do it alone. Keed replied that he simply pierced the shell from behind with his spell, and suggested that this lizard probably had a weak spot. He even offered to show the body, which he kept in his inventory. Sally, seeing the trophy, was breathless. It was truly a metal lizard. She guessed that the damage on the back and began to examine it together with the boy. When Keed showed the hole in the armor, the girl, embarrassed, quietly asked for permission to approach first. He apologized and stepped aside, and she sat down nearby and looked more closely. Examining the hole, Sally whispered in amazement that she had never heard of magic capable of causing such destruction. It became clear to her his power was completely unlike the usual forms of sorcery. She sincerely thanked Keed for defeating the monster and said she would go report to the authorities. The boy was already about to say goodbye, but she insisted he must go with her. In the guild building, Keed immediately bowed his head and apologized to the old leader. He was surprised, but asked him to stand up and said that the guild had long suspected something strange in the behavior of the monsters. The leader finally admitted his mistake. He underestimated the threat and dismissed the report about a powerful enemy. On behalf of the entire guild, he sincerely thanked Keed, because without him hundreds of people would have died. The boy replied that the victory was hard-earned, and added that no one could have predicted the appearance of such a strong monster. The old man approved of his calmness and wisdom. Not only strength, but also intelligence makes a warrior a true hero. Keed gasped when the guild master asked to keep the fact of the victory over the metal lizard a secret. The old man explained that he did not want to sow panic among the residents and cause misunderstandings. He added that even rumors about the appearance of the metal lizard could cause chaos, and who would believe that an ordinary adventurer could defeat such a monster? The guild master emphasized that it was just a request. If Keed wanted, they could officially announce his feat, but the boy only smiled and refused the fame. He finally admitted that he still wanted to tell Dovro about it, and the old man did not object. The blacksmith, he said, was excellent at keeping his mouth shut and not prone to gossip. The guild master grimly explained that there was no equipment in the city to process the metal lizard, and advised to head southeast to the mountain city of the dwarves, where there are special forges for such material. Keed decided to go to the city of Herrera to create a sword from the monster's remains, and he knew. With this, he was saying goodbye to the city. There were no strong enemies left nearby. The boy decided to say goodbye to everyone who had helped him. Preparing for the journey, he thought it was better to travel at night and rest during the day. The blacksmith seemed to already suspect that he would leave the city. Keed visited Sally with a bundle of herbs and said that he was leaving the city. Sally was confused and immediately asked if it was because of that conversation in the guild. The boy explained that he was heading to Herrera to forge new weapons. Sally froze. Travelers rarely leave their cities, and a thrill ignited in her heart. He quietly said that our invasion of green wolves was caused by the same metal lizard that he had already destroyed, and the girl nodded, acknowledging that now the city was safe, even without him. Recalling the first days in this world, Keed could not help but think how lucky he was to meet such a kind person as Sally. She smiled, and offered to wait so he could pay for the herbs. Saying goodbye, the boy thanked her for everything, and said he hoped they would meet again. Sally took the herbs and replied that she hoped so too. She smiled goodbye, watching him with her eyes. Keed looked back once more, silently said farewell, and set off on the road through the mountains. On the 5th day of the journey, he suddenly realized he had already covered half the way to Herrera. Calculating the speed, he could not believe his eyes. He was moving twice as fast as a horse. On the map, he noticed a crowd of people near the road. Approaching closer, he saw strange silhouettes as if someone was being dragged by force. The boy pressed against the tree and fell silent when he saw a group of armed men holding a tied child. Keed decided to follow them to understand the situation. Suddenly it became clear to him these were bandits. One of them was even standing guard while the others were guarding the prisoner, and suspicion turned into certainty. According to the strict rules of the bandit guild, they either kill or capture alive. Keed focused, preparing for his first ever fight with people. Activating the recognition skill, he received confirmation. All 6 were real criminals. His heart beat faster, but his determination only grew. One of the bandits stepped aside for a need, which immediately alarmed the rest. A few seconds later, a strange sound came from the forest, and the leader ordered 2 subordinates to check the source of the noise. They came across a felled tree, split by a single powerful blow. One of them approached closer, and at that moment Keed, falling from the branch, launched an attack from above. Using pressure magic, the boy struck several enemies at once. A stream of power pierced their backs, causing them to fall with cries of pain. Even the weakened version of the spell proved deadly. Other bandits stood up, their eyes filled with fear as the young man approached them. One tried to say something but did not manage. Keed was already moving forward, resolute and merciless. In a few minutes he stood among the motionless bodies, gasping for air. He only wanted to stop them, but the power of magic killed them instantly, and even realizing this, the boy felt no remorse. Keed approached the tied-up girl. She was unconscious. Activating his inspection skill, he discovered that a forced hypnosis spell was cast on her, and he simply did not know how to remove it. Reaching the city, Keed carried the girl in his arms, hoping to find help, and addressed the guards near the gate, explaining that he had rescued her from bandits. One of the bearded men, seeing the unconscious child, flared up with rage and shouted at Keed, accusing him of a crime, while the boy froze confused, not understanding what was happening. The gnome rushed to him. He immediately recognized the girl as his daughter, and not letting Keed explain, instantly threw accusations. The boy panicked and explained that he had saved her from the forest and recalled the strange spell. 2 guards intervened, calming the situation. One said that the hypnosis spell could be easily removed with a special potion, and the other thanked Keed for the rescue and offered to carry the girl himself. When everything finally became clear, it turned out that the gnome was simply desperate because of his daughter's disappearance. The guards calmed him down, saying that gnomes are hot-tempered, and he apologized to Keed for the false accusation. The gnome introduced himself, sincerely thanked the boy for saving his daughter, promised help in the city if needed, and then, without even letting him ask about the forge, gladly invited him to join the celebration in honor of the girl's return. At the celebration, everyone raised their mugs and rejoiced at the child's rescue. Keed noticed that the gnome did not hear his words. He was too caught up in the joy. But the boy was not angry because familiar tools lay nearby, just like at Doverose. The girl approached him, thanked him for the rescue, and introduced herself as Sumisa. She admitted that she did not remember what had happened but already looked completely healthy. Sumisa assured that she felt well, apologized for delaying his journey, and asked if he was traveling as an adventurer. The girl advised him to use the local forge if he wanted to create a weapon. Keed blushed when he learned that they really knew how to work the metal of a lizard there, and immediately began asking about the cost. When he heard the price, he realized he did not have enough money, but Sumisa's father, grateful for the rescue, offered to make the weapon for half the price. Keed inquired whether he could sell the materials. He stated that he had the entire body of a metal lizard with him. No one believed him, so he decided to show proof. When the giant body of the lizard emerged from his inventory, everyone around froze in shock, and only one of the men whispered that it was incredible to have such a carcass. Keed explained that his storage was a bit larger than usual. One of the specialists examined the body and confirmed that it was perfectly preserved. The buyer announced the amount 3 million bodies per kilogram, warned that he would not buy everything at once, but the terms were more favorable than those of the guild. Keed agreed in surprise. After the deal, Sumas began preparing for work. He summoned assistants, asked if the boy possessed fire magic, and upon hearing an affirmative answer, declared that it was time to cut the lizard's body. The hero asked what exactly needed to be burned and heard a cold explanation to extract the metal. The innards must be burned out, and according to the dwarf's calculations, this could yield up to 500 kilograms of rare material. Sumas was stunned by the power of the boy's magic and guessed that he had defeated the lizard alone, using a spell no lower than level B, while Keed just smiled and admitted that he preferred the sword and had a short staff that did not interfere at all in close combat. The blacksmith admitted that he had never heard of such a style and was impressed by the length of the staff, only 20 centimeters. He asked what it was made of and heard that the boy bought it in an A, not knowing the material. The blacksmith thoughtfully wondered whether the material affected the speed of spellcasting and asked if it was possible to create a staff from the lizard's metal. Sumas suggested that the current staff was made from an iron rod and a copper wrapping standard for beginners, and added that with sufficient funding, a staff could be created that accelerates magic many times over. The master confirmed. A staff could be made from this metal, but it would take time. The material was too hard and required special processing, and the structure of staffs differed from swords, so the process was completely different. He'd sincerely thanked for the advice, and he was advised to contact Sumasa if he really wanted to create a staff. It turned out that she made the best magical staffs in the city. He'd approached the girl and asked her to make a short staff from the lizard's metal so that the magic would work as quickly as possible. And Sumasa, stunned the task seemed too difficult to her, asked if he even understood the process. The boy, recalling her skill that his father had spoken of, asked her to teach him how to create staves, and she, surprised but interested, agreed to explain the basics. Sumasa began with theory. The length of the staff directly affects the speed of magic. The longer it is, the faster the spell activates. She showed a drawing where the staff seemed to unfold into three parts: the core, the acceleration layer, and the outer shell, with the quality of the core determining the speed of mana flow, and the density of the shell determining the stability of the energy. The girl explained, if the density is exceeded, magic begins to leak out, and better materials make it more effective. It was a delicate science of balance between power and control. Keed suggested making a short staff as fast as a long one, and at the same time it could be used to fight like a sword, and this idea stunned Sumasa. He specified that he wanted to make the shell from lizard metal and embed a charging mechanism in the acceleration layer that would provide a constant energy supply. Sumasa explained that such a short staff would draw mana from 3 mages at once, but in return would allow casting 100 spells in a row. Keed smiled. His mana reserve had increased 500 times compared to normal, and with the elixir 5,000 times. He declared that such a weapon was within his power. This was the essence of a true adventurer. The girl looked at him in awe. Sumasa agreed to craft the staff, warning that the boy risked quickly exhausting his mana, so he promised to increase its capacity to prevent this. After finishing all the work in the forge, Keed decided to wait 3 days until the work was completed, and in the meantime he completed quests in Herrera. He took a new task. The hero found himself in the middle of a battlefield, fighting wolves again. His shield shone, deflecting blows, and his movements became confident and precise. He fought like an experienced warrior. Keed successfully completed the task of destroying the red wolves, but noticed that his magic was still too slow. Despite this, he looked around the area with interest and enjoyed the silence and the view after the battle. The young man noticed that there were no trees around at all and was slightly worried, wondering if this was related to the rare appearances of monsters near the city. Suddenly, his device detected the presence of people. He immediately became alert and started guessing who they could be. Analyzing the signals, Keed noticed 2 people standing guard near the entrance to the shelter and instantly understood. Ahead was a bandit lair, although it looked abandoned from the outside. The boy immediately rushed to the guild to report the discovery, and the branch chief in Herrera was stunned by the news of the secret base and could not understand how the bandits managed to get here so quickly. Keed suspected that this was not a simple gang of criminals, but a well-organized group. The guards at the entrance spoke of discipline and possibly an experienced leader. He explained he did not have time to count the enemies. First, he had to warn about the danger. The guild leader promised a reward, but the boy refused for him. The main thing was to prevent the threat. The leader asked to keep this secret so as not to scare possible allies of the bandits, and said they would create an elimination team, which Keed, as the one who discovered it first, would join. The next day, Keed visited the workshop and hopefully asked Sumasa if the weapon was ready yet, but she sadly replied that they had not managed to make it yet. The boy admitted that he hoped to test the new weapon during the mission, but had to make do with old equipment. Smiling, he accepted it as another endurance training. Near the city, he noticed cut-down trees and asked if it was for protection against bandits, and one of the locals explained that the wood was used to produce coal needed for metal smelting. Sumasa noticed this was ordinary coal suitable only for heating, not for quality smelting. Then Keed recalled that in his world limestone and coke were used for this. He enthusiastically proposed another way to make coke by specially burning coal, and generously shared his knowledge with the girl. Keed, as if revealing a small secret, explained the difference between ordinary combustion and coke production. If air access is limited, coal does not burn to ash but turns into concentrated fuel. Sumasa admitted that she knew nothing about fuel and devoted all her time only to making staffs. She advised the boy to contact the owner of the fuel shop if he wanted to try his idea. The girl added, if Keed proves the effectiveness of the new fuel, it could become extremely valuable and make him rich. These words made him think. Keed entered the fuel shop and asked if it really belonged to Igni. Hearing the affirmative answer, he smiled and explained that he had a proposal that Sumasa advised him to check. Igni asked what the idea was about, and Keed said that the new fuel is made from ordinary coal, but it releases much more heat and can reduce deforestation. But the owner looked at the idea with distrust. The boy knew, first, it was necessary to prove in practice that the method really works. He'd promised to cover all the expenses for the experiment, but if the technology works, he would only demand a share for its use. He nodded and said that in this world, invention rights are respected, so the deal would be safe for both parties. The boy added that the method is not perfect yet, but it is worth taking the risk, and his confidence impressed the merchant. Igni agreed to cooperate. He was curious about what would come of it, and Keed sincerely thanked him. The idea found support, and he was glad about it. Despite the success, he reminded himself, his path is not making fuel but adventures. Meanwhile, the night after the report about the bandits passed, the guild gathered a squad to eliminate the gang. Keed greeted the other team members, preparing for the joint mission. The blonde mage introduced himself as Magi's and announced that he would lead the operation. He was a wind mage of rank B and immediately took command. The group gathered around the map, studying it intently. The enemy base was located 8 kilometers to the southwest, and the number of bandits was estimated at 30 to 40 people. There were 7 in the team, including Keed. Despite the rank E, the enemies had a numerical advantage, so they decided to act as cautiously as possible. The leader asked everyone to state their names, ranks, and specializations. 2 warriors, Zenchi and Valen, identified themselves as swordsmen of ranks D and C respectively. Next came the others. Hankus, a spear-bearer of rank E, Ino, a swordsman of the same rank, and Mukoku, an archer of level D, and now it was Keed's turn. The boy confidently, and with a slight smile, called himself an adventurer of rank E, skilled with both sword and magic. And this brief introduction instantly sparked the team's interest. A true magical swordsman is not encountered every day. Keed noticed the surprise blooming in his comrades' eyes. They were impressed that an adventurer of such rank could use magic on the fly. One of the squad, apologizing for his distrust, awkwardly asked him to demonstrate what he was capable of. The boy admitted that he was not seeking recognition, but understood that for the team's safety they needed to know each other's strengths, so he agreed to show his skills without trying to appear stronger. Keed approached the training dummy and decided that hiding his power could be more dangerous than showing it. If he was underestimated, someone on the team might get hurt. When he was ready, several warriors exchanged doubtful glances. They offered him a potion to enhance his strength so the fight would look more realistic. But the boy refused, saying he could manage on his own. He performed a series of lightning-fast sword strikes. Even experienced adventurers froze in amazement, and the boy thought this would be enough to assess his blade technique. Next, he demonstrated magic. A stone spear spell exploded on impact, raising a cloud of dust and carving a deep furrow into the ground. A powerful wave of energy swept across the training field, scorching the ground. The spectators immediately fell silent, and Magi's hurriedly stopped him and ordered not to repeat it to avoid damaging the arena. Keed asked if they were satisfied with what they saw, and the long-haired mage only nodded. That was more than enough. Immediately after, he inquired about his endurance and mana reserve. The boy replied with a slight smile. He became an adventurer less than a month ago, but already knows how to continuously cast spells for 20 minutes and instantly heal minor wounds. The squad leader nodded respectfully, acknowledged his strength, and although there was envy in his voice, asked Keed to lead the assault. Such an ally on the front line was invaluable. The young man was a little worried, but took responsibility and decisively said he would go first and protect his comrades. The squad froze at the edge of the forest, behind which, under the cover of shadows, the bandits' lair was hidden, and after a quick meeting they decided. Valen and Keed would lead the assault, and Magi's would cover the rear. Keed nodded. The plan was accepted. 4 members went around to block the back exit, and he immediately created the spell Stone Spear, breaking a path with a magic strike. The defeated bandits fell without even managing to raise their weapons. One of the fighters shouted that the boy was too fast, and the rest only tried not to fall behind. Moving forward, Keed effortlessly navigated the cave using the radar, and thanks to his recognition skill, easily distinguished enemies from hostages. Suddenly, he activated pressure magic. A powerful wave rolled down the corridor and knocked the bandits to the ground. The leader shouted in panic, "Pin them down at all costs." The squad pushed forward, panting from the fast pace. Keed noticed that the path did not branch otherwise. Advancing would have been much more difficult, but he felt the main part of the battle was still ahead. Giant stone doors without any handle towered before them, and Keed guessed they could only be opened from the inside. The mechanism was made especially strong to repel attacks. Voices were murmuring behind the door, and the boy felt there were many people there, and the space was so wide that his radar did not cover the entire area. Magi's asked a question: could Keed destroy the obstacle with magic? Hearing yes, he counted the seconds, urging the squad to storm. The door exploded from the impact, and Keed was the first to rush forward. The bandits shouted, not understanding who attacked them. Activating the recognition skill, he instantly realized that everyone inside was an enemy and released a series of stone spears, filling the cave with explosions. Even when magical wolves summoned to help the bandits appeared, Keed and his allies were already firmly controlling the situation. The opponents fell one after another. When the clash subsided, the group gathered near the entrance. Magi's admitted the victory was too easy, all thanks to Keed's power. The boy noticed a strange signal on the radar, but first decided to collect trophies. It seemed the mission was completed. The radar showed 7 people and 1 child were approaching them. The commander assumed they were kidnappers and ordered to capture them alive and Keed to save the child. A group of strangers with a little girl came out of the forest. One of them loudly shouted about their arrival, but the squad was already preparing for battle. The adventurers rushed into attack. In the heat of battle, Keed released pressure magic, and the archer girl covered the hostage, preventing the enemies from approaching. The boy picked up the child in his arms and froze in surprise. She was so light, as if completely lifeless. It seemed to him that a spell of forced hypnosis had been cast on her. When Keed activated the recognition skill, her name flashed on the screen, Rhea. Physically, she was unharmed, but the system marked her race as special. She was not an ordinary elf, but a being of mysterious origin. Keed looked up in surprise when he saw Rhea's status. It was radically different from the usual. There was no mana reserve shown at all. Instead, the skills listed were external magical energy and magic control 17, indicators higher than his own. The boy wondered what this could mean and guessed that the girl might be using someone else's magical power if its owner poorly controlled it. While he was thinking, Rhea woke up and, feeling a powerful aura, asked in surprise who he was. Keed realized her ability to absorb uncontrolled mana from others and turn it into her own power was a true miracle, and he could not imagine how such a unique child could have been given to kidnappers at all. And when the girl called him older brother, the boy involuntarily got confused. Having learned the name of her rescuer, Rhea confirmed with horror that she had indeed been kidnapped. Keed handed her over to his allies and asked about the situation, and he was told that the enemies had been neutralized and losses were minimal. When the boy wanted to untie the ropes, Rhea smiled and said she could manage on her own and freed herself with a single jump. Keed only blinked in amazement, not understanding how she did it. The girl cheerfully explained that she had no mana of her own at all, so without help she would not have been able to save herself. After the ordeal of captivity, her cheerfulness was surprising. The boy asked how she then broke the ropes. Rhea just smiled and replied that she simply used his power. He had too much magic but weak control, so taking a little was easy. Keed was confused. Could it be that she really stole his mana and he did not feel it? The boy's energy did not fade for a moment, and this confused everyone around even more. One of the mages said that the guild would find the place of the kidnapping, but Rhea categorically refused to go with them, and when asked why, she only blushed and fell silent. Then the girl puffed out her cheeks and complained that the magic of the green uncle was too complicated. She loudly declared that she wanted to stay with Keed. He hesitated at first, but after the insistence of his comrades, he agreed, and Rhea happily hugged him. The boy noticed with surprise that she was amazingly obedient and did not look scared at all. He could not understand how such a child survived the kidnapping, but decided that the truth would come out in the guild. At the guild, they explained to him that according to the rules, kidnapped children are temporarily left under the care of those who rescued them. But before that, the registrar wanted to add something, and her voice trembled with anxiety. When it was said that Keed had to temporarily stay with Rhea, the girl clung tightly to him and exclaimed that she did not want to be separated, and others asked in surprise if they really did not know each other, and the boy awkwardly assured that he was seeing her for the first time. Rhea was jumping nearby, excitedly repeating how fluffy the blanket was and how everything around was interesting, and Keed realized that she was behaving like a child without memories, so he decided to treat her with care. That night he gave her the bed and lay on the floor himself. While the girl was falling asleep, he thought that because of her he would temporarily be unable to take quests, but he wanted at least to check how the experiment with coke and weapon creation was progressing. Waking up, he saw Rhea nearby. She was lying face to him and looking attentively, and the boy was confused. After all, he was supposed to sleep separately. Keed forced a tense smile, greeting her. The girl happily said that she woke up because she felt the movement of his magical energy, and the young man only sighed, completely bewildered by her naturalness. Later, he visited the fuel shop to find out about the results of the experiment, and Igni, the owner, gladly greeted him, but seeing the girl, froze and, with surprise in his voice, asked if it was not too early for him to become a father. Keed hurriedly explained that she was a kidnap victim he had saved, who had lost her memory, so for now he was temporarily taking care of her, and Igni nodded sympathetically and asked if the boy had now put aside his adventures. Rhea sharply intervened and declared that she could fight too, then cheerfully added that next to Keed, she was even stronger than the green uncle. The boy guessed that she called Magi's that because of his green cloak. He confirmed that he was indeed temporarily resting from travels, and Igni recalled that according to the latest data, Rhea had no combat skills despite her words. Keed looked at the furnace with interest, which Igni showed him, carefully studying its construction and admiring the complexity of the mechanism and the thoughtfulness of the form. Smoke was curling from the pipe, and the boy held his breath. Looking anxiously at the master, he reassured him that it was temporary. Gas was still leaking through the cracks, but the experiment was ongoing. Igni admitted that working with mithril was incredibly difficult. He said he used an old furnace that he had rebuilt himself, and if this prototype succeeded, he would order the blacksmith to make a full version. Keed was surprised when he learned that the furnace was made of mithril, a material that in his world was valued almost like adamantite. He asked if the budget would be enough, but the master just laughed and said that this metal was everywhere here. Rhea anxiously pointed to the stone nearby, said with a sparkle in her eyes that it was also mithril, and even the walls contained its admixtures. While Keed was silently confused in his imagination, such metal was supposed to be extremely rare. Using the recognition skill, the boy confirmed. It was indeed medium-quality mithril, and the merchant smiled and explained that even the not purest ore had value after all. A third of all local stones contained its admixtures. Keed awkwardly smiled. Mithril in this world seemed to be quite cheap. The master joked that his ideas were too game-like, even though he had invented coke. The boy said with relief that at least there were no problems with finances, but the gas leak needed to be urgently fixed, and Rhea looked at the stove with interest, from which smoke was still coming out. Suddenly she exclaimed that she would fix everything herself and rushed to the stove. Keed grabbed her shoulders fearfully, explained that it was dangerous, and asked her to stay away. Rhea pouted but agreed to act from a distance. Stretching out her hands, she concentrated. A stream of magical energy hit the stove and instantly sealed the holes from which the gas was escaping. Igni froze in amazement, and Keed stood nearby holding the girl in his arms and not believing his own eyes. Keed watched in surprise as Rhea joyfully announced that she had stopped the gas leak, and the master in the apron and the boy himself were stunned, watching the smoke from the stove actually disappear. The boy could not understand how Rhea did it. Her magic level was too low, and the girl cheerfully explained that she simply melted the mithril with the power of magic and sealed the crack. Keed asked in surprise if she really saw the mithril with her own eyes. Hearing the affirmative answer, he decided to teach her a bit of common sense. He bent a piece of metal, explaining that mithril was not an ordinary alloy. The bearded master noted that even bending mithril with bare hands was a rare strength, and melting it from a distance was almost impossible. Rhea clapped her hands excitedly, enjoying the boy's reaction. A man in a white suit approached them, introduced himself as Mia's, a local accountant, and greeted Keed, saying he had heard about his achievements. Mia's did not waste time, immediately got down to business. If coke production started to scale up, technical compensation needed to be discussed. Keed quietly nodded and agreed to listen to the proposals. The boy did not hide his surprise. They were already talking about mass production, although the experiment had not yet stabilized, and the merchant smiled and confirmed. This is great news. The coke turned out to be incredibly effective. Mia's passionately explained that coke makes the melting of mithril 20 to 30 times more efficient than charcoal, and the profit from one furnace will pay off in 10 days, so they want to start immediately. Keed confessed embarrassedly that this was his first time participating in such matters. He was counting on only 10% profit, but the merchant offered 50, extremely generous. At such a percentage, the boy turned pale. At first he thought it was a scam, but then he decided the offer was honest. Smiling, he agreed, although 50% still seemed excessive to him. After signing the agreement, Keed learned that production could be established in other cities as well, true, with a commission, and it seemed to him that events were unfolding too quickly, so he was a little worried. Rhea asked where they would go next. The boy thought he had no urgent matters, so he decided not to bother the blacksmith while he was cleaning his weapons. The girl, full of enthusiasm and with a sparkle in her eyes, announced that she wanted to go on a journey to fight monsters. Keed smiled, feeling the fighting spirit in her, but warned that it could be dangerous. He advised her to wait until she learned to defend herself with magic. But showing the ornament in her hair, she confidently stated that it was her talisman, and with Keed, she was safe. The boy froze in surprise. It turned out to be a protective amulet that neutralized any attack and remained invisible to evil intentions. He paused for a moment, wondering where she got such a powerful artifact. When she asked if she could fight now, Keed only asked her not to go far, understanding why she was so carefree. Leaving the city limits, they found themselves in the forest. Rhea instantly found the needed plant, and the boy noted with relief that he had chosen the calmest quest to start with. He activated his analysis skill to make sure it was the real phyro herb, and then used recognition to confirm the correctness of the choice. Among the found samples, one grass turned out to be a fake brevitrava, and Rhea approached, and with anxiety in her voice asked if everything was all right, and the boy quietly admitted that he had made a mistake. She showed another bush, smiled, and asked if this was the real grass. Keed confirmed that it was and praised her. The girl rejoiced, thinking she had won, and he joked that then he would win by quantity. They continued gathering. The boy, using analysis, quickly found new areas and gradually increased the amount of grass. When he announced the seventh found sample, Rhea accused him of dishonesty. Keed laughed, admitting that he was cheating a little, but still considered himself the winner until he noticed that she had already managed to collect several plants before him and did so without analysis. He suggested that she might also determine the location of phyro by some form of magical sensation, but Rhea denied it, so the boy immediately asked how exactly she did it. It turned out that the girl simply feels where Keed directs his magical energy during analysis. She uses his power as if reflecting it, but suddenly fell silent, becoming alert. Rhea concentrated, and stone projectiles surrounded by flames flared up around her. Keed thought with surprise that it looked like a stone needle, but with a fiery aura. He, alarmed, asked what had happened. There was no one nearby, no enemies. Rhea confidently replied that she felt their presence. One of her stone projectiles broke free and flew into the thicket. From there came the cry of a wounded beast. Keed became alert. Red wolves burst out from behind the trees, and he realized that Rhea had noticed them 100 meters before they appeared. The girl explained that she could catch special magical vibrations both from monsters and from Keed himself. The boy realized with surprise that he was also a source of energy for her. Rhea smiled and said that her magic was self-guided, so it was always accurate, and when Keed was surprised, she laughed. "You are just too safe to control such power." Keed cast a spell, and a stream of magical energy surged toward the target. Rhea intercepted his power and redirected it with incredible precision. Stone blades burst forward and sliced the wolves like sharp lightning. A powerful discharge struck the pack, instantly destroying several enemies. Rhea exclaimed joyfully that Keed's magic was much stronger and faster than her own. The boy thanked her, smiled, and moved on. Rhea explained that an ordinary person cannot release all their mana in a single impulse, but Keed is an exception. The boy thought that if she can control only one type of magic, then his power truly goes beyond the normal. Rhea warned, if she tried to tame his unstable magic, everything would explode, and Keed wondered could his control really be that chaotic. He imagined himself as a swordsman acting with brute force, and Rhea as a precise mage working with form. Her power was less, but his energy reserve was huge, and together they created a perfect balance. The boy decided he would provide the power and Rhea the accuracy. Until they find her hometown, he wants to enjoy this synergy and believes their duo is invincible. Several wolves prowled nearby, then suddenly charged in attack. Rhea exclaimed worriedly that there were far more predators than it seemed. Keed smiled briefly and looked around, and the girl sternly reminded him about magic. He nodded, feeling the familiar pre-battle excitement. Sensing his mood, Rhea also smiled. The same spark ignited instantly in both, a thirst to test their own strength. Rhea smiled and said she only used the magical energy that Keed involuntarily emitted. The boy noticed with surprise that his mana level had not changed at all. He froze in amazement when the girl admitted she had exhausted all his surplus power, and Rhea added that she could not control the source itself, only direct the flow. Keed froze at her words. He had never understood exactly how his magic worked. Everything happened instinctively, without logic or theory. The boy asked if he could achieve the same accuracy if he trained. Rhea replied that it was possible, but without special talent, and compared him to a person from a world without mana. Keed pondered if he could cast spells without preparation. Maybe he had a truly unique gift. Rhea only said that even the gifted need control, otherwise magic dissipates. She explained that he cast spells with brute force, just like when he changed the form of Mithril. The boy realized he had always used the same forced summoning technique. He felt that the source of his magic was nature itself. Water, earth, air. If the temperature rises, ignition can be caused. So his magic was a combination of imagination and natural conditions. After the battle, Keed thanked Rhea for the prepared food, and surprised, noted that the dish was salty despite having no spices. The girl laughed and said she simply took salt from the earth. On the page of the new chapter appears a girl. She stands before a spinning sword. The chapter title is, "I Decided to Think About It." Keed and Rhea returned to the guild with a mountain of trophies and brought everything for inspection, while the guild workers looked puzzled at the volume of the loot. It turned out they had gathered over 4,000 phyro herbs and defeated more than 300 red wolves, and the guild girl just blinked. Keed was already used to such reactions. A guild employee approached him and quietly said she wanted to talk about Rhea. The boy was surprised, and the girl quietly watched from the side. They were invited to a separate room. Keed guessed the conversation would be about Rhea's return home, but he saw how hard it was for the woman to start. He decided to ask himself, could her parents take the girl back? The guild girl apologized sadly and, lowering her eyes, said that they had not been able to find her parents. The boy did not believe it, but she quietly confirmed there were no traces. She explained, captured bandits said that none of the cities resembled her homeland. They admitted Rhea was simply found in the forest. Keed assumed that her native land could be very far away. The girl from the guild sighed deeply. Theoretically, it is possible, but the chance is almost zero. There is no record in any database of a race with features like Rhea's. Keed asked the girl to be patient, suggesting that she might have been abandoned because of her appearance, but the guild worker firmly denied this version. She assured that although there are no details, witnesses claim Rhea was not abandoned. Her origin is hidden but definitely not tragic. Keed recalled that he had already given the guild all her data, the hair ornament, abilities, the race recorded as a special type of elf. And he felt that despite the amnesia, the girl remembers more than she says. Rhea said she only remembers the forest where she did not feel any magical energy, and firmly stated that this place is far away, possibly not even on this continent, and her calm confidence caused the boy to feel uneasy. The guild representative admitted that finding a guardian for Rhea would be difficult, and Keed, looking at the girl, suddenly wondered maybe she is not a child, but a creature much older than himself. Keed asked if there was anyone who would take care of Rhea. In response, they said that if no one volunteers, the girl would have to be sent to an orphanage, and hearing this, Rhea looked at the interlocutor, frightened. She shouted that she did not want to go to the orphanage, rushed to Keed, and pleaded to let her stay nearby. The guild worker cautiously asked if he could take the girl under his care, understanding that this would be difficult for a traveling adventurer. The boy thought usually this would indeed be hard, but he remembered that Rhea had lost her memory and only finds peace next to him because she feels the same magic. A worry flashed through his mind. Would he be able to take her with him on journeys? If they encountered a strong enemy and had to spend all mana on battle, the girl, dependent on his power, might become completely defenseless. Keed realized he has no right to risk her life. Until he is sure he can protect her, she will remain his responsibility, not just a companion. He asked for some time to think. The guild worker agreed and added that the decision could be made before his next move, and Rhea at that moment just silently looked at him. Keed promised that he would not leave Rhea alone. The girl smiled with relief and nodded, and the boy felt the tension ease. At least he had given a sincere promise. The next morning, Keed woke up to Ray's Noizesh suggested going to the guild and trying to fight stronger monsters, naming dangerous creatures with obvious excitement. The hero replied that he had other matters today, so they would set off later, and when he realized that the girl wanted to prove her usefulness so that he would not leave her, it deeply moved him. On the street they met Sumasa, who happily announced that the staff was ready. Ray was surprised to hear that Keed uses the staff, and he explained that he is a magic swordsman. Kovalka immediately became interested in who his companion was. Keed proudly drew the sword staff, and naming it Wizard's Blade. Shown with delight, he managed to combine the power of the sword and the magic of the instrument. Rhea, with wide-open eyes, noticed that the staff emitted a powerful aura, and Sumasa, smiling slightly, explained that it was created at Keed's request in this strange form and, although unusual, it became one of her best works. The boy noticed that the weapon was perfectly balanced in weight and agreed to test its magical power. Sumasa suggested going to the training ground, and everyone rushed there. Keed focused, gripping the hilt. Streams of mana burst from the staff. Sumasa felt what a powerful energy it was, and the boy noticed that the new weapon simply sucked out magic, so he limited its power to 200 megapixels. Uttering the stone spear spell, Keed released a stone spear that exploded with terrible force and tore the ground apart, while Rhea and Sumasa watched with wide-open eyes. Sumasa gasped in amazement. The speed and precision of the strike simply stunned her. Keed, no less shocked, realized that such power was only possible thanks to the new material, and even guessed that he could hit the target from a kilometer away. After the demonstration, Sumis asked how much mana he had spent, and Keed replied, "About 100 megapixels for him, it was a trifle." Kovalka exclaimed in shock that this power equals 5 mages at once, and asked in surprise if he was even human. The boy laughed, called himself an ordinary guy with a slightly elevated mana level. and asked Ray not to tell anyone. Keed sincerely thanked Sumasa for the excellent work and said that he was glad that she was the one who created this weapon, and she replied that if he was satisfied, that was the best reward for her. Sumasa said that the accountant from the fuel workshop was looking for him, and added that Miya's wanted to talk after finishing his business. When they met, Miya smiled and reported that the equipment for coke production was ready. 10 machines had already been launched, and mass production had begun. He explained that the miners learned about the new technology and willingly agreed to cooperate. Previously, there was a shortage of workers, so Miya's turned to the Miners Association for help. Keed was stunned by the scale of this organization, and Miya's confirmed. They were the ones who ensured such a rapid launch and suggested visiting the production site together. At the industrial site, work was in full swing. The dwarves tirelessly loaded coal. Steam and smoke curled above the furnaces, and it was clear that the project was alive and thriving. Keed, Rhea, and Miya's arrived at the section where dozens of dwarves were working. Rhea looked at them with admiration, and the young man explained that these were workers from the Miners Association. At that moment, an unknown man approached them and addressed Keed. He introduced himself as Gainter, the head of the Miners Association, said he had already heard about Keed and wanted to personally thank him. The young man was stunned to realize that the leader himself was in front of him. Gainter sincerely thanked them for the help and smiled, saying that Rhea made a good impression, and then his voice and face became serious. He said he wanted to discuss an important problem. He explained that a strange ailment had begun in the mines. Workers groaned from headaches and nausea, unable to work, and it all resembled a mild magical intoxication after eating wyvern meat. Keed suggested that it might be toxic gas from the mines, and Gainter quietly agreed, noting that for newcomers this was an unknown phenomenon but truly dangerous. He added that although there were no deaths or serious complications, under such conditions the miners would not be able to continue working. Rhea listened attentively, and Keed already understood a new trial awaited them. Keed inquired how the miners cope with the ailment, and one of the workers sadly explained that to somewhat ease the symptoms, they have to stay away from the mine and work no more than 3 hours a day, spending the rest of the time resting. Because of this, things have worsened and most have ended up unemployed. The boy pondered. The illness takes away almost a whole day of rest, and if he used the assessment skill, maybe he could calculate the source of the problem. He turned to Gainter and suggested investigating the cause of the ailment to improve coke production. Gainter nodded approvingly and recalled that the guild had already announced a similar task, but no one succeeded, so he sincerely hoped Keed could. Rhea asked if it would be a fight, but the boy replied that this time the enemy was not monsters. Keed asked Rhea to stay, explaining that due to poisonous gases the situation could be dangerous. He knew she would object, but did not want to take the risk. The girl was upset, but agreed. The boy asked Gainter about the area where the energy felt the densest, and he replied that it was the most dangerous place. It was abandoned first because the most people died there. He'd cautiously asked Rhea if by density she meant magical power, and the girl explained that the sensation was similar, but the source was different. It seemed to pulse underground. Keed noticed one of the miners turn pale and immediately used the assessment skill to check his condition. He did not see what Rhea felt, but suspected something was wrong. The analysis showed magical energy was off the charts, and Rhea confirmed she felt a strange force that probably came from monsters deep in the mine. The boy began to understand how big the problem was. Gainter asked one of the workers, Garnier, how he felt. He admitted he was unwell. He had just returned from the depths of the mine. Gainter gently advised Garnier to take a break and not overexert himself. Then, smiling, noted that Rhea, despite her young age, had considerable talent almost like Keed. The head of the association suggested taking Rhea on the investigation, saying the illness affected children less, and in case of danger they could retreat quickly. Keed hesitated, but as soon as Rhea confidently said everything would be fine, he agreed. The girl happily beamed, glad to be able to be near him again. They swiftly moved towards the mine. Rhea flew nearby, barely touching the ground, and Keed, impressed by her lightness, kept running. He thought that if danger flared up, with such magic she could simply fly away, and soon they found themselves near the mine entrance, next to which hung a warning about the miner's ailment. Keed asked Rhea to report if she sensed the presence of monsters. Rhea nodded, smiled, and stepped forward cheerfully, full of determination. She admitted that the thick walls muffled her sense of magical flows, but promised to try. Meanwhile, Keed decided to activate his own detection. It worked better under such conditions. He felt a strange pulsation underground and asked Rhea if she noticed it too. The girl came closer and confirmed the power beneath them was growing. Rhea noticed that the density of magic was getting stronger below and was surprised that Keed could feel it. He admitted that without a radar he wouldn't have figured it out and suggested digging up the spot, to which Rhea readily agreed. The boy began digging, and the shovel suddenly hit something hard. Rhea immediately noticed the place was noticeably different from ordinary rock. Keed froze in surprise, not understanding what he had struck. Clearing the earth, he came upon a smooth stone surface. "Looks like a wall of an ancient structure," he guessed, and Rhea agreed, adding that the barrier was filled with such magic that even he would hardly be able to break it. He'd laughed and asked Rhea to step back. His curiosity only sharpened. He decided to test the limits of his own power against this mysterious wall. For 10 minutes he kept casting spells, and Rhea, impressed, asked if he was even human. The boy smiled and replied that he was, just a bit more resilient. For the first time, he charged magic to the fullest right in front of Rhea, activated pressure magic and struck with all his might, but the wall remained unscathed, and this genuinely surprised him. As soon as he realized how powerful the barrier was, Rhea suddenly screamed a warning of danger, and at that very moment the ground beneath their feet trembled and began to collapse. They both found themselves over the abyss. Rhea screamed, Keed tried to hold her, but the stone crumbled and they fell down together. Keed, feeling that her magic would not withstand their weight, shouted for her to let him go. He would take care of the landing himself. Rhea reluctantly agreed. Falling, the boy instantly assessed the distance, about 15 meters, and decided to use restorative magic to soften the impact. He had only seconds left. Keed summoned a stream of stones that closed around him in a shield to deflect debris and endure the fall. The landing hit hard, but the boy remained unharmed. He slowly got up, not believing his own endurance, and soon an anxious Rhea ran up to him. Keed asked Rhea to illuminate the darkness, and the girl spoke a spell. A soft glow spread through the cave, and the boy watched in delight as the light reflected off the walls of the mysterious dungeon. Keed looked around. The huge underground chamber shone with soft magical light. He was impressed by the scale of the hall and its almost complete emptiness, and the smooth, towering walls seemed to hide a secret erased from the world's memory by time. Rhea admitted she did not understand what this place was, but felt a powerful, soft, almost fluffy, magical energy. Keed suggested that they had ended up inside an ancient structure, possibly abandoned by the first mages. Hearing Rhea's confirmation, the boy immediately realized this was the source of magical energy the miners had talked about. He even laughed with excitement and decided that after exploring, he would definitely inform Gainter about it. Assessing the height, Keed asked if Rhea could fly up. She admitted she could not rise that high, and the boy's anxiety surged. The way back was blocked. He wondered how her flying ability worked. Probably, she controlled air currents and magical pressure, and he was surprised that Rhea's flights were limited in height. Looking for a way out, Keed suggested using the same magic to lift them both. Rhea screamed in fear that he would not be able to control the flight and they would crash before reaching halfway. Then the boy suggested looking for another way out and asked Rhea to determine from which side the energy was felt strongest. She pointed the direction without hesitation, and they headed there, leaving the abyss behind. Walking forward, Keed reminded that their task was only exploration, not fighting. Rhea exclaimed passionately that she wanted to fight, but quickly became embarrassed because she accidentally called him a big monster, and the boy only sighed heavily. After some time, they again found themselves near the same debris that had fallen from the ceiling. Keed realized they were walking in circles. Perhaps the room was ring-shaped. Looking around, he noticed that all the walls were the same, but Rhea suddenly whispered. One of them felt different, as if another energy was hiding inside it. When they approached closer, they noticed a strange area where magic seemed to dissolve in the air. Keed understood that it was a disguised door, made to look like a smooth wall, and his radar could not determine what was behind it, which made him wary. He assumed that the door could be opened, noticed traces of an old mechanism, but warned Rhea. Danger might be hiding behind it. She nodded, and together they cautiously approached closer. When the massive slab slowly slid aside, a cold wind burst from the darkness. Keed closed his eyes, and Rhea froze in amazement, and clear silhouettes were moving in the darkness. Suddenly, mechanical creatures with sharp, shiny limbs flew out of the darkness. Keed instantly shielded Rhea and shouted that these were monsters, not alive, but constructed. Suddenly, one mechanism exploded and fell. The boy wondered if Rhea had destroyed it, but decided not to get distracted. Battle was just beginning. Activating his magical sword, he rushed forward. Blow after blow, flashes of stone spears and waves of pressure tore the metal creatures apart, and his goal was simply not to let Rhea get hurt. When the fight ended, Keed rushed to Rhea, anxiously checking if she was okay. She, a little confused, said that he was the one who stopped the needles, although the boy himself did not understand how. Rhea explained. The closer the monsters got to him, the weaker they became, and she looked surprised as if his presence was suffocating the foreign magic. He'd noticed the behavior of the creatures was strange. They acted not like living beings, but like magical mechanisms. Rhea agreed and added that even the shape of their bodies was too perfect, and then quietly muttered that Keed himself was strange, to which he turned around suspiciously. When he used the skill of evaluation, the truth came out. These were magical guardian tools, Flying Eye, and the door they passed through turned out to be a low-level magic isolation barrier, and such items in the world were called artifacts. They realized they were in ancient ruins. Keed added that they were here illegally and again noted his radar could not see what was beyond the barrier, as if the space there was distorted. The boy hesitated whether to return or not, but Rhea firmly objected. Retreat would mean defeat. She confidently stepped forward and he was forced to follow her. They checked 8 new doors, but behind each was only an empty room, like an abandoned laboratory, no signs of an exit or energy source. Silence suffocated everything around, only the faint echo of their footsteps wandered along the cold stone walls, and Keed felt that this place had long been dead, abandoned by the mages of a past era. Yet the air was tense. The magical fluffiness Rhea spoke of was becoming denser. She admitted that she heard the echo of someone's heart in the walls, and the boy decided they had to go further. Finally, they came across a door with a loud inscription, "Unauthorized entry prohibited. Violators will be eliminated." A chill ran down the skin. Keed felt cold in his chest, and even greater danger awaited ahead. He swallowed a courage elixir, and Rhea indifferently said that no matter what monsters there were, all would fall. However, the boy remembered. Their goal was to survive and find the exit, not to fight. As soon as the door opened, suddenly a wave struck from under the ground, a trap. The boy managed to dodge and cover Rhea when a new guardian rose from the shadows, like a metallic beast. Keed froze in surprise. How could he have hit it if he himself saw arrows whistling past? Time and space in this room seemed distorted. Rhea shouted in fear that there were several enemies. Keed looked around and saw dozens of moving shadows silently approaching. The air became heavy, and his heart suggested this was only the beginning. Before him swirled a crowd of creatures no longer hiding. Guards of various colors, mechanical wolves, flying scout spheres, armored pourers emerged from the shadows, preparing to attack, and the air buzzed with their mechanical roar. Among them, a huge flying serpent soared into the sky. Its steel body twisted with such force that the stones beneath its feet cracked. Its size alone was terrifying. Rhea felt a wave of disgust and contempt from it, as if the creature itself despised all living things, and Keed realized. That was not the main thing. The real trouble was that it controlled the other guards. The serpent raised its head, and sharp metal spikes rained down from all sides. The boy shouted to Rhea to run and himself rushed aside, dodging the barrage of blows. The girl exclaimed that she needed a stone spear, and he immediately understood what she intended. Stopping, Rhea focused her magic and released stone spear at the nearest enemy's. Flashes tore through the darkness, cutting through smoke and dust. But when the fog cleared, guards appeared before them whole and unharmed. Rhea was stunned, and Keed could not understand why his magic had no effect on them at all. The mechanical wolves did not retreat. One lunged straight at him. Rhea screamed to warn him, and the boy turned and prepared to take the attack. He was filled with surprise. The creatures moved too fast and silently. They did not look like simple machines, so to check, he grabbed the magical sword, the only weapon he trusted. The strike on the enemy's iron body exploded with a bright flash. Magic scattered in sparks, but the wolf did not stop. The predator was very strong, but Keed did not retreat. He gathered all his strength and kept holding the blow, gripping the hilt so tightly his fingers turned white. With a powerful jerk, he cut through the metal armor. The wolf's body shattered into pieces, and eventually the sword overcame the resistance, proving stronger than the armor. The boy realized that his blade cut these creatures while magic was powerless, so, not knowing what this metal was made of, he decided to test it. The analysis was stunning. This is second-class anti-magic steel, crystallized with mana particles, an alloy that not only resists spells but also absorbs them. It turned out that all these guards were completely immune to magic, and this immunity extended throughout the complex. Even magical artifacts here could prove useless. Rhea, dodging a hail of projectiles, suggested overwhelming the enemies with stone spears, using several spells in succession. The boy liked the idea of power against power. He focused on the wolves, but the real threat was the giant snake hovering in the air, preventing the destruction of the smaller guards. Its tail destroyed everything in its path. Even metal columns could not withstand it. Keed wondered why didn't it attack the other machines, as if they obeyed it. Rhea shouted that the snake was preparing a powerful strike. The boy looked and saw a huge glowing sphere forming in the creature's jaws, a fiery charge capable of wiping out everything around. Keed's heart tightened. The situation was already critical. If they didn't act, they would die together. He decisively ordered Rhea to retreat to the stairs. She obediently rushed back, and they almost reached the doors that could save their lives. But their disappointment was terrible. The doors leading to the stairs lay in ruins. The same monster had turned the exit into a pile of debris. Other mechanisms, like loyal servants, surrounded them and were already preparing to deliver the final blow. Keed realized there was no retreat left, only battle. To defeat the snake, a different approach was needed. His sword couldn't reach it, magic was useless. He asked Rhea if her power could knock the monster from the sky, but she shook her head it was too strong. Suddenly the girl noticed the snake's wings and exclaimed that if they destroyed them, the creature would fall to the ground and then they could finish it off with fire. Keed smiled this was a chance, but to carry out the plan, he would have to create a fireball of such power to pierce the armor. Rhea focused her energy before her grew a giant sphere of flame, shining like a small sun and radiating unbearable heat. Together they aimed the fiery projectile straight at the winged beast. The air trembled, and the ground beneath their feet caught fire from the magical explosion. But the serpent noticed the attack. Suddenly flapping its wings, it created an air wave that deflected part of the flame. Rhea realized this was not enough. The explosion shook the dungeon, debris fell from the ceiling. When the smoke cleared, they saw the serpent was unharmed, its wings only slightly blackened. Disappointed, Keed understood that ordinary power was powerless against this enemy. And suddenly, a crazy, but the only idea that could work flashed in his mind. He asked Rhea if she could control the fireball herself, but the girl replied that it was impossible, there was too much magical energy inside. So Keed would have to control it himself. But without precise control, he would miss the wings, so the boy estimated how much power needed to be added to guarantee their destruction. Rhea concentrated, calculated instantly, and declared that the power needed to be increased 20-fold. And Keed did not hesitate. He ordered to prepare the spell while he distracted the monsters and kept them from coming closer. The girl again grew a ball of flame in her palms, and the boy, gripping his sword, stood before her, protecting her from waves of attacks he felt. This time their lives depended on combined strength and trust. Keed still felt the mana enough to accumulate a charge for the spell, but all the artifacts around, except the serpent itself, were already in ruins. The floor cracked, the air pulsed with magic, but he did not retreat. The ground beneath his feet suddenly began to sink, but he deftly dodged the serpent's tail. Rhea supported him, though both felt anxiety something went wrong, and suddenly a dull crackling sounded above them. Stones fell from the ceiling, and Keed fearfully raised his eyes. A huge crack was crawling along the ceiling. Rhea also lifted her gaze and saw that the vault was about to collapse. The boy understood. The snake is destroying the walls, and soon the entire hall will collapse if they do not act immediately. It will bury them alive. He asked Rhea if it was possible to deal with the monster using 10 bullets, and she shook her head. No, unless they double the power then maybe, but there was no time left. The snake lunged forward again, sweeping away debris and breaking stones. Keed, tensing every muscle, covered Rhea, preventing her from being hit, and she replied that she was holding on but felt something strange, and immediately a crack in the ceiling widened, and chunks of stone fell from above. Rhea, gripped by panic, shouted, "What to do?" The boy yelled that they had to run, and with one gesture ordered her to press closer. He firmly embraced her with one arm, preparing to dash. Having no choice, they rushed to the opposite edge of the hall, looking for another exit. But the snake instantly noticed their movement and spread its wings ready to attack again. Running, Keed realized with horror. Ahead stretched a straight, endless corridor, no branches, no shelter. He prayed in his mind that somewhere below there was at least a ladder, or a crawlspace, any path to salvation. When they reached the end, they found themselves in a dead end. Ahead was a solid wall, behind death was closing in, and the snake slowly raised its head, gathering strength for a strike. Keed felt the next attack would be the last. The ceiling was still holding, but one more explosion and everything would collapse forever, so he forced himself to think faster to gain a few seconds and prepare the spell. Options flashed through his mind: return to the stairs, clear the path with stones, or hide debris in the inventory, but that required time, and the snake was already swinging. One miscalculation and it would be over. The boy took a defensive stance. Rhea stood behind, clutching his cloak, eyes full of tears, and he felt her fear and the weight of his own responsibility. The fate of both was being decided here. Suddenly she asked, "Give me the fireball." Keed did not understand why did she need it. After all, she herself said she could not control the ball. Rhea firmly said that she would try anyway, and determination burned in her voice, even though there was no plan. Having no other way out, he handed her the sphere. The girl trembled but clenched her hands tighter, trying to control the blazing orb that was breaking free. She directed magic into the hairpin, the very talisman that absorbed energy. The device began to absorb the excess power, stabilizing the sphere, and light rose around it like the sun. Keed saw her hands trembling and shouted for her to stop. It's dangerous. But Rhea only whispered his name. She smiled gently, sadly, as if trying to dispel his fear. Adventures are fun, right? She said, and courage on the edge of self-sacrifice rang in her voice. He silently nodded. If she was ready to take the risk, he was too. They would stand together until the very end. Rhea screamed, putting all her strength into the cry, and threw the sphere straight at the monster. The fiery orb turned into a stream of light that tore through the dungeon's darkness. The strike hit the target. The explosive wave knocked the serpent from the sky. Its metallic body fell and shattered the floor like a stone mountain. Keed wasted no time. He rushed forward while the enemy lay motionless. It was a chance given by Rhea. Grabbing his sword, he gathered all the remaining strength, and with one powerful strike cut through the monster's body. Streams of molten energy burst out. When the dust settled, the serpent's body lay motionless, its eyes extinguished. Metallic scales lost their shine. The boy breathed heavily, feeling the fight was over. Exhausted, he barely stood on his feet. Hearing footsteps, he looked back. Rhea was rushing to him, excited and happy. She asked if it was all over. Keed smiled. Yes, it seems we made it. Then, looking at her, he quietly added, How are you? Keed asked Rhea if she felt calm after everything she had been through. The girl admitted that she did not. Chaos still swirled around, and the air was filled with remnants of magic. She quietly said that maybe everything would subside in a week, and smiled, sincerely glad that they survived. But now it was time to run. There was no direct exit, so if they cleared the debris, they could get through the hole in the ceiling. Exhausted to the limit, they flopped down on the ground to rest a little. Keed's gaze involuntarily froze on the hairpin in Ray's hair. After the fight, she was strangely sparkling. The boy asked if she had really risked both their lives, hoping the magic would not get out of control, and Rhea awkwardly admitted she had failedly. A pin held the magic, and Keed sighed. It was madness. The girl simply laughed and said that the main thing is that everything ended well. She even joked, I wonder what will happen next time. Keed thought tiredly that if every adventure were like this, he wouldn't live long. Rhea nodded and, smiling, asked if he would take her with him next time. Her eyes shone with hope, and her voice trembled with joy. This event showed that the girl can stand up for herself. Her hairpin, though dangerous, became a real shield, and Keed realized, Rhea is not just a burden but an ally. He thought he had no right to deprive her of adventure, even if she was a child, and traveling with her was much more interesting than being alone. Smiling, he said that together any journey becomes a true story. Extending his hand to her, Keed said seriously, From now on we will travel as friends. His voice conveyed sincerity and respect. Rhea blossomed with joy, rushed to him and hugged him tightly, as if afraid to let go. In her eyes, the light of new hope sparkled. Turning back to the city, Keed reported on the artifacts he discovered in the dungeons during the investigation of the miner's disease, and his story stunned the listeners. The girls stared at him with open mouths, not understanding how this could be. The boy explained. The first artifact was called the Magic Eye, and its power corresponded to an E-rank monster. The second was the Blue Eye, rank D. One of them asked if that blue metal wolf he defeated was also an artifact. Keed confirmed, added that he had another trophy, and showed the girls the body of another monster. Their faces froze between surprise and horror. It was a winged serpent, the very one he destroyed. The girls looked at it with wonder, not understanding what the wings were made of, and Keed himself had no answer. He explained that all these artifacts were connected to the cause of the disease. One of them, the largest, emitted energy that infected the miners, and now, after its destruction, the ailment was supposed to disappear. Hearing this, the girls asked in surprise if Rhea also took part in the battle. When they learned that they managed it in just half a day, the girls sincerely thanked them on behalf of the guild. They admitted they had not encountered such artifacts for a long time. Even ruin researchers had no information about them, so if the guild knew nothing, it meant these ruins were older than everyone thought. Keed froze in amazement. Even the guild had no data about the find, so he decided to evaluate it himself. His skills could reveal hidden properties. The analysis revealed the truth. This serpent turned out to be a prototype of a medium destruction, cannon and experimental weapon of ancient mages, and the dungeon had been abandoned since it broke out of control. Keed realized, if he publicized this, he could get into trouble, so he decided to remain silent and keep the secret. Rhea, seeing the fragments, whispered excitedly that this was probably the strongest artifact of all. The boy agreed. This serpent with one tail strikes scattered metal wolves. He himself defeated only about 30, and at tens of times more. The girls froze in amazement. If he single-handedly dealt with such a number of enemies, then in strength he was not inferior to a rank adventurers, and they already looked at him as a hero. One of them suggested that the artifact must have had at least rank A. Keed did not know what to answer, but suddenly heard that he was about to be promoted to rank B, and for this not only strength but also leadership qualities were needed. In the boy's heart, pride shone. For the first time, he felt that he had done something truly important not only for himself but also for this world. The next day, he met with Gainter to talk about the miner's disease. The man shuddered upon hearing that the problem had been solved 3 days ago. Gainter turned around confusedly, not believing his ears, and asked how Keed managed to investigate and eliminate the cause so quickly. As soon as the boy finished the report, the conversation casually shifted to the topic of coke production. They discussed how to prevent technology leaks while simultaneously expanding production. The kingdom was already preparing to officially sell fuel, and the technical fees had been paid. Keed understood this was an invention capable of changing the entire country. But suddenly he was seized by anxiety. Everything was happening too fast, too massively, and he thought with horror, was he creating a new power that might one day also break free from control. Keed decided to join negotiations with the kingdom to develop business in the capital. He would give part of the profits to the miners' union and place all responsibilities on them. But he himself was still a traveler and did not intend to settle down. A week passed, and the negotiations with the miners' union were successful. The fuel production plans finally took clear shape, and the guild recognized his contribution. A few days later, Keed solemnly informed the guild that he was accepting Rhea into his team. She was issued an adventurer's card, and he was awarded a certificate for the fastest achievement of rank B at such a young age, not a feat on the level of kingdoms, but a significant step forward. Lost in thought, the boy suddenly remembered something interesting and addressed Rhea. He wanted to talk about her hairpin. When they were leaving the ruins, the ornament was black as tar, but now it blazed with colors. Rhea explained that this happened due to discharge and subsequent recharging by her magic. The hairpin restored its energy. Under normal conditions, it would have charged for 30 years, but this time it managed in 2 days. Keed froze. This indicated that his mana had nuclear concentration, and he wondered what would happen if he directed the energy flow straight into the hairpin, but Rhea sharply warned. It would break her, and at that moment a girl approached them and apologized for being late. She reported that she had finished extracting magical energy from the iron lizard, so now, having the necessary equipment, the metal could be processed anywhere. Keed thanked her and asked Rhea if she needed additional armor, but she refused. Excessive protection was not to her liking. Rhea asked if they would head to another city, and the boy smiled and replied that there were no plans, yet they would just move forward and let fate lead them to new adventures. But suddenly Keed felt something alarming and instantly stepped forward, becoming a living shield in front of the girls, ready to take the blow. Rhea watched cautiously. Sumasa asked what had happened, and the boy, turning pale, whispered, "Something disappeared." He turned to Rhea to unravel the nature of this phenomenon. It turned out that 100 kilometers from them, the magical aura had completely vanished. Keed could not find the source of such a powerful surge, but even from afar he felt it. It was magic of colossal power. The boy knew for sure no one in the world could create such a grand spell. It felt as if an ancient artifact, resembling that flying snake, had suddenly turned off. Keed suddenly realized the source of the anomaly was hidden behind the very same mountain they had seen in the distance. He asked Sumasa about the nearest settlements within a 100-kilometer radius, and the girl replied that at the foot of the sleeping volcano lay the city of Orthian. She warned that the path there led through a dangerous labyrinth full of monsters, and Keed, hearing this, only smiled even wider. They would go there. Sumasa sighed. Anxiety and anticipation mingled in her chest. She already knew this boy could not sit still. A true adventurer always walks toward danger. On the road, Keed asked Rhea if she was tired. She barely smiled. She was bored, not tired. It seemed the gravity magic caused no side effects. Probably she used the remnants of its energy, and with moderate movement could fly almost at its speed, so in 10 minutes they were to reach Orthian. But suddenly the girl stopped. Monsters were ahead. She exclaimed joyfully that she wanted to deal with them, but Keed had no desire to delay. He wanted to reach the city as soon as possible, but escape was impossible. Their path was blocked by a swarm of giant crabs. Seeing the enemies, the boy just smiled. Time to warm up. Rhea replied cheerfully, and the two of them rushed into the attack, clearing the way. Keed asked her to beat but not kill. This caused surprise. He explained that the crabs looked extremely appetizing. It was a pity to lose such a delicacy. Rhea laughed and said she had never seen such creatures and did not know if they could be eaten. The boy agreed similarity does not always mean edibility, so he decided to conduct an assessment. The assessment revealed, these are 4-clawed crabs with 1,200 health points, 147 strength, and 59 agility, and the most interesting thing is that they are actually edible. Keed smiled contentedly, and Rhea suddenly noticed someone else nearby. These were giant brown cockroaches that, surprisingly, turned out to be edible. but Keed felt disgust and revulsion just by looking at them. He immediately ordered to run, and Rhea asked in surprise why since they seemed weak, to which the boy replied that they just spoiled his appetite. They fled away, raising a cloud of dust behind them. Keed carried Ryu in his arms, and she, turning pale, barely held back her nausea. Finally, they reached Orthian. At the city entrance, a man met them and said with surprise that traveling with a child on these monster-infested roads was risky. Rhea casually said that the monsters were weak. The man looked surprised those creatures were D-rank and could not be weak. His gaze fell on Keed's sword, and he immediately understood that this boy was not ordinary. He remembered that only master blacksmiths and experienced adventurers can recognize a rare blade. Keed smiled. "We can handle any monsters, except cockroaches." Then he seriously asked, "Why are there so many monsters near the city?" The stranger explained that Orthian is surrounded by 4 large forests, each inhabited by numerous monsters, and that recently they have begun migrating from one forest to another as if fleeing from something. Keed gloomily pondered. All the monsters they encountered on the way were indeed moving in one direction. This was no coincidence, as something big was approaching from the mountainside. Keed asked if the man knew the reason for the monsters' migration, and he awkwardly admitted, "Almost nothing is known, only rumors. The Adventurers Guild should know more, but so far it has not sent any high-ranking teams, so the problem was not considered serious." Keed did not share this confidence. His experience suggested otherwise. Guilds often hide the truth. He recalled how the locations of bandit hideouts were once kept secret and suspected that the same was happening here. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet shook from an underground tremor. Rhea grabbed the boy's hand in fear and asked what was happening. Keed reassured her. He said it was just an earthquake, a common occurrence near volcanoes. He was alarmed by the smell, a sharp sulfurous aroma that heightened his anxiety. The man nearby simply said that earthquakes have been becoming more frequent lately, but for locals, it is almost routine. He smiled and jokingly added that it was the city's trademark, then warmly welcomed the travelers and led them through the gates. Inside, Orthian impressed with incredible beauty, a city of ruins and hot springs, where ancient stones bathed in steam and the water quietly babbled. Rhea looked around in delight, while Keed silently marveled at the harmony of nature and time. Having just settled into the hotel, the boy was bitterly disappointed the night here was 10 times more expensive than in Herrera. Entering inside, he immediately understood what he was paying for. 3 spacious rooms, a kitchen, heated floors, true luxury for travelers. Smiling, Keed asked Rhea if she could cook crabs with magic. The girl immediately lit up with the idea and got to work right away. During the cooking, the ground shook again. Keed asked Rhea to move away from the cauldrons and was glad that she already knew how to levitate. Soon dinner was ready, and they sat at the table, and Rhea, proud of her culinary experiment, suggested tasting it immediately. The boy tried first and smiled with surprise. The taste was not at all inferior to real seafood. And seeing this, Rhea also took a piece. Her eyes sparkled with delight. It was so tasty that she couldn't hold back a smile. Keed just winked. "Yes, this is a real delicacy." He reminded to leave some for breakfast and put away the leftovers in the inventory. Rhea obediently agreed, but quickly fell asleep from fullness right at the table. The boy smiled, covered her with a blanket, and wondered how old she was. She looked like a child, but had incredible strength inside. This strange event, the sudden drop of the magical background near Herrera, troubled him. But now the main thing is to rest and regain strength. The hotel had an open-air bath under the stars. Keed couldn't remember the last time he truly washed himself. Usually, he only used a water ball. Now he decided to take the opportunity while Rhea was asleep. Diving into the warm water, he felt his whole body relax and his thoughts slowly calm down. But his peace was overshadowed by a trifle. Did not find shampoo, but he smiled to himself. Even dirt from clothes is washed away by plain water. Perhaps it was a side effect of one of the artifacts he carried, and if someone destroyed such an item, the consequences could be catastrophic. Suddenly, the ground shook again more strongly than before, and the boy thought it was another earthquake. But at that very moment, he heard Rhea's scream, desperate and frightened. He was scared that something had happened. Maybe she had fallen or was frightened by the trembling. Hasty footsteps were heard, immediately understood that it was her flying. The door burst open, and the girl flew into the bathroom, all in tears. Keed, realizing he was without clothes, screamed in panic, begging her to stop. Later, Ray was already sound asleep, and the hotel fell into silence. Keed sighed he had to go to the guild before she woke up. He whispered a prayer so that nature would not unleash another cataclysm, and headed to the Orthian guild branch. He needed to find out the details of the task to investigate the place where the magical flow disappeared. He had already felt this phenomenon near Herrera, and now the traces led here, so the boy decided not to mention the artifact to avoid suspicion, and simply asked if the guild knew anything about the nearby forests. He explained that he just wanted to understand what information they already had so as not to repeat the research. The girl behind the counter apologized embarrassedly. She knew nothing. Keed noticed the intern badge on her uniform and immediately understood everything. For a moment he doubted whether she was hiding the truth, but her gaze was sincere. He suspected, even if the guild knew something, ordinary workers were not told, so he would have to find out everything himself. Other workers Keed questioned also said they knew nothing. The boy mentally apologized to the intern because he realized he might have to pressure her, and once again resolutely said he was investigating the disappearance of a huge magical force. He was about to hint at his suspicions about the artifact when suddenly another girl approached them and coldly asked him to stop the conversation. She quietly called him to follow her. Keed agreed he needed to find out what she knew. The girl asked how much he knew about artifacts. Her calm confidence showed she was an important guild employee. Keed hesitated whether to tell everything, but finally admitted he had felt a strange disappearance of magical energy, and his friend explained that it could have been a consequence of the artifact losing power. Hearing this, the girl sighed with relief and asked the name of his friend. The boy answered, Rhea. Hearing this name, she instantly became alert and asked again if his name was Keed. He confirmed in surprise, and he felt uneasy. How did she know their names? It turned out their names were already in the report, a pair of rookies who recently performed an unthinkable feat and showed extraordinary strength. She added that only a few could cover the path from Herrera to Orthian in a whole day. They did it in 3.5 hours, and that was enough for them to be recognized. The news of their appearance spread like lightning. In a world without phones, this could only mean one thing: the message was transmitted through a magical channel. Keed realized that before him was an organization better not to get involved with, and cautiously asked if the guild really hid data about the artifact. The girl confirmed. Only selected members had access to the information, but someone ordered to postpone its disclosure. The boy froze from the impression if even the guilds were forbidden to publish something, it meant the order came from above, possibly from the feudal lord himself. He asked if one always had to wait for permission to share data. The girl explained, not always, but in some cases, when the situation is not critical, one has to act carefully. She assured that this was not an extraordinary matter. The culprits had already been caught and punished. Keed jumped up. If everything was decided, why was the magical background still disturbed? He had a feeling that the real reason was hidden deeper, so he suggested conducting his own investigation. The girl introduced herself as Lasha and asked that if anything happened, they refer to her. He nodded. She promised to help with any information when needed. Keed thanked her. He could not ask anything more. In the end, he still did not learn anything new, but was sure someone was deliberately hiding the truth. Lasha recalled that the criminals had turned off the artifact, but the monsters still continued to flee, so it was not just turned off, it had to be destroyed, and perhaps the answer lay in the fragments. Rhea, hearing this, lit up with impatience and enthusiastically asked if they would go fight the monsters today. The boy smiled and nodded. He reminded again, they are in the forest right where the magical stream disappeared. Their task is not so much a fight as a search for traces of the artifact. He asked Rhea to report any monsters or abnormal energy surges, and the girl readily agreed. She only noted that her magical tool was malfunctioning from time to time. Keed laughed. Searching for the artifact without magic is a futile task, and for an ordinary person it is generally impossible. He asked if she could determine the direction from which the energy came, but Rhea looked around confusedly. There were too many powerful magical sources around. Hearing this, the boy decided they would comb the entire perimeter even if they had to destroy hundreds of monsters. They immediately rushed to comb the territory, fending off attacks from creatures that kept jumping out of the fog again and again. Suddenly he heard a noise. Rhea was already fighting several monsters at once. From the sounds, it was clear there were dozens of them. Keed sighed. She was exterminating enemies faster than he could collect trophies, and this slowed down their work. Then he decided to try using magic to pull the bodies of monsters toward himself. But he did not manage to concentrate properly, and suddenly everything around began to be attracted to him. Dust, stones, and even trees. Rhea exclaimed in surprise, "What are you doing?" And Keed laughed and admitted his carelessness. He asked her to help pull the loot with magic, but the monsters turned out to be too heavy even for her. Then the girl suggested a simpler option. You can just move faster, use speed magic. Keed was surprised. He had heard about this type of magic for the first time. Rhea explained that it was similar to her flight. You need to saturate the body with mana to strengthen muscles and reaction. The boy decided to try. She only asked him to be careful and not accelerate toward her. For a start, just a slight acceleration to check if the body could withstand the energy flow. Keed activated speed magic and whispered the acceleration spell but barely moved. Surprised, he decided he had used too little mana and tried again. This time the result exceeded all expectations. The boy dashed off so swiftly that a cloud of dust rose and the wind lifted Riaya's hair. She froze with her mouth open, and he himself seemed not to understand what had just happened. The speed was so insane that he couldn't brake and simply crashed into a tree, splitting the trunk in half. Awkward magic, he only thought, sweating. Riaya rushed to him, anxiously asking if he was alive. Keed waved her off intact, not even a scratch, and only now he realized that his clothes had miraculously saved him. He suddenly remembered. His equipment enhances defense by consuming mana, but could it really compare to armor made from gauze and leather? It seemed incredible. Suddenly an idea came to him. He asked Riaya to explain why the armor worked upon impact. The girl thought for a moment and exclaimed, "That's always the case. Your clothes constantly absorb the mana you emit." Then added that the armor grows with the wearer. And Keed was stunned. This was not just clothing, but living magical armor that strengthens proportionally to his mana. Riaya couldn't believe he didn't know this, and he just laughed. Probably even previous owners were unaware of this property. Again seized by excitement, he asked if he could master acceleration, and the girl advised just to keep training. So Keed decided to turn training into a real hunt to train by destroying monsters, and this idea greatly pleased Riaya. They trained for hours. He fought for control again and again, but each time crashed into trees or fell and still did not stop. Exhausted but stubborn, he did not cease trying, and Riaya, watching him, felt anxiety. The magical flows around became too unstable. Keed asked to be shown where the nearest monster was. As soon as the girl pointed the direction, he dashed forward swiftly. Now he finally began to understand. Uncontrolled acceleration would inevitably lead to collision if he did not learn to turn off the magic in time. So he had to activate the spell for just a moment. Ahead, sensing danger, the monster became alert. Keed dashed between the trees like an arrow, and in a moment closed the distance. The beast, frozen with fear, stood still. With one strike he threw the monster aside. It fell as if dead. Ria, confused, whispered that his movements were very strange, but the boy just waved it off. The main thing is that it works. But at that very moment the girl froze. Something powerful awakened nearby. A strong, strange, magical energy that vibrated through the earth pierced both their hearts. Filled with curiosity, they set out to find its source. Soon they came across huge magical circles carved into the ground. The place breathed ancient ruins of Herrera, and its surface repelled any spell. Ria could not contain her admiration. Keed frowned without a doubt. Something was hidden under these circles. He praised Ria for her vigilance, because this discovery was a true gift of fate. They informed Lasha about the find, and she immediately asked for all the details. Ria yawned. All this seemed boring to her, but Keed asked her not to interrupt, and told that to the southwest, 12 kilometers away, he had discovered a sealed entrance, an object resembling a lid. Descending down, they saw ancient ruins ravaged by time and scorched by fire. Everywhere were blackened traces of fire, scattered pieces of metal, piles of ash and debris of burnt structures. Former grandeur turned to ashes. Lasha, looking around, asked if anything valuable remained. Keed nodded and pointed to an object resembling a round pedestal, an artifact. In the middle of the room stood a massive round device. Keed was sure this device was the cause of all the magical disturbances. Next to it lay scattered fragments of a large magical crystal. It was clear that it once stood on a pedestal. Carefully examining the structure, they understood. The pedestal was part of a more complex system, like a node of a large machine. None of them had any idea what it was for, but Keed guessed. It was just an auxiliary object, subordinate to something much greater. Probably the destruction of this crystal caused the anomaly in the magical background. Lasha, hearing this, froze in shock, then thoughtfully crossed her arms. Keed suspected that even if she knew something, she would hardly admit it, but her confused face revealed this was news to her as well. After a pause, she quietly said she wanted to clarify something. She recalled his words. These underground ruins were probably just an auxiliary structure, and asked him to explain why he thought so. Lasha felt that Keed and Riaya knew much more than it seemed, and their talent for investigations was by no means accidental. She was right, they both really thought analytically. Keed was stunned. How could she come to such a conclusion from just a few phrases if no one was supposed to know about his gift? Lasha quickly calmed him. She was not going to demand explanations. She only wanted to better understand the potential of adventurers capable of handling the most difficult tasks. Recalling how quickly they uncovered the cause of the miner's illness, Lasha concluded one of them must have a hidden analytical skill. The observer of the conversation only raised his eyebrows in surprise. Keed himself became a little worried. What if the girl used this information? Yet he admitted, Lasha was extremely clever. The boy decided that honesty was the only path to trust, and dared to tell her the truth about his unique abilities. Lasha listened attentively, approved his determination, and said they would discuss the route to the ruins later. He did not immediately understand what she meant. Later, everything became clear. She wanted to add them to the list of those who would have official access to the investigation. Only selected guild members knew about the current problems, and now he and Rhea were to become part of this circle. But Lasha warned, without the permission of the authorities, she could not reveal all the cards, asked them to be patient and not to hope for too much. Keed, a little nervous, thanked her. He felt that he had gained her trust. But the biggest obstacle was the hidden data. Until Lasher obtained permission, he would have to independently investigate the place where the main system of the artifact might be hidden, the mysterious Orthian labyrinth. The next morning, Keed asked if everything was okay with Rhea, jokingly asking if she had hit her head during sleep. The girl laughed. Everything was fine. She just dreamed that her bed had become a little higher. Keed did not understand the joke, but did not have time to ask again. The ground was shaken again by another earthquake. The boy gently stroked Rhea's head. She calmly replied that she was already used to it. Warmth spread in his chest. She really had become braver. Rhea asked where they were heading today, and Keed replied that to the guild to learn more about the labyrinth. But he had not yet explained when an unfamiliar girl and boy called them, inviting them inside to talk. A woman from the guild informed them that they were chosen at the request of the archaeologist Fiona San to help explore the newly discovered ancient ruins. Keed looked at Rhea in surprise. She had never heard that name. The task turned out to be contractual. The choice was theirs, to agree or refuse, and the letter explicitly stated that Fiona wanted to cooperate privately, outside the guild. Keed asked if the archaeologist was a guild representative, and heard in response, no. This raised even more questions. Why did the stranger invite exactly them? The boy suspected that Lasha was involved, but decided, even if it was her intrigue, a night expedition to the ruins was harmless, so he thanked for the information and said he would meet the archaeologist personally. When they approached the building, Keed noticed that it looked like a tofu restaurant, and Rhea just blinked. She did not understand at all what he meant. Before the entrance, the girl suddenly stopped, pointing to a magical field near the door. She said it was strange, as if alive. Keed became alert. Could it be a trap? Rhea confidently replied, unlikely. She guessed that the field was connected to the door. Maybe it recognizes visitors. Keed joked that it was a magical intercom, but just in case, he ordered to be on alert. They slowly moved forward. The door opened by itself, and a friendly voice sounded in the room. Are Keed-san and Rhea-chan here? Girl stepped out of the darkness smiling, with a sly look. She immediately said that she recognized them. That was exactly how they were described, and the combination of a swordsman and a young mage seemed unusual to her. Keed froze in amazement. Before them stood a beast person with fox ears and soft golden fur. He asked, "Are you Fiona-san?" And she nodded cheerfully. The boy awkwardly asked if she was the one who invited him for a private investigation. The archaeologist smiled and decisively replied, "Yes, it is my initiative. The guild has nothing to do with this. I want to study the ruins personally." She explained, these ruins are very unusual, completely unlike what Keed had seen. She came across them herself, and it was not a fabrication. But her behavior seemed too cautious. Keed suspected that the guild was behind her, and the girl was using a loophole to pass data to him without directly breaking the rules. He asked if she could tell more about these places. Fiona replied that terrible monsters lived there. She had already tried to explore the catacombs herself, but fled empty-handed. Keed was surprised that the archaeologist dared to go there. Fiona just laughed and said she had plenty of endurance. She asked not to address her so formally, smiled, and said, "I'm not some important person," then noted that these ruins cannot be conquered with ordinary artifacts. "Only with the help of your hairpin, Rhea," Fiona added thoughtfully. Rhea immediately protested, "It's not for strangers' hands." The archaeologist laughed, and rightly so. "Even if I wanted to, I couldn't use it. Such an artifact obeys only the chosen one." Keed finally realized that Rhea's hairpin was not just an ornament, but a true artifact, and asked if there were any restrictions on its use. He asked if every artifact had its own authentication, and Fiona explained, "Only the most powerful possess such a property. High-class artifacts choose their owner from the moment of appearance, and no one else can use them." Keed could not contain his curiosity about the rank of Rhea's hairpin. The girl said it required serious research, but of all the magical items she had encountered, this one was of the highest quality. Even Fiona, accustomed to rare relics, was struck with admiration at the perfection of the artifact. Rhea shyly asked if her hairpin was really that special, and she was confirmed. Keed realized that the girl was carrying something incredible, and the mystery only deepened. Overcome with curiosity, The boy asked Fiona what reward she would consider worthy of his help, and the archaeologist calmly replied that he could take all the artifacts he found in the ruins if he helped her study them for 3 days. He did not expect such a generous offer. He even asked if she did not think the terms were too favorable for him, but Fiona only smiled. She was interested not in the loot, but in the research process itself, and artifacts had no value to her because she could not fully decipher their essence. Keed understood. Her true passion was archaeology, not magical engineering. Fiona honestly admitted that her knowledge was superficial and asked to share observations on the way deeper into the ruins, and Rhea gladly agreed and promised to tell everything she saw. Fiona simply explained that no guild rules bound her, so she could freely share information. Keed realized that Lasha had used this loophole to pass data to him without breaking prohibitions. If it did not affect active investigations, the information could be safely disseminated, so everything they learned in the ruins could be openly discussed. It turned out that Fiona would gain experience, and he would gain knowledge about the artifacts. For Keed, this was a brilliant deal. Why risk for nothing? And inspired, he asked when they would set out. The girl answered briefly, "As soon as they are ready." He was surprised by such a quick decision, but did not object. Her determination commanded respect. They could have dragged negotiations on for a long time, but the chill of an invisible threat looming over the world forced him to act immediately. They decided to depart right now. Soon they found themselves in a cave. Inside, it was stifling from the heat. The air was filled with the smell of sulfur, and Rhea joyfully exclaimed that she felt many small magical items, but no powerful source. This meant that the main crystal was probably destroyed, and the traps, on the contrary, remained active. Keed agreed. Many dangers awaited them ahead. He asked what Fiona's plan was, and she asked back, did he really have the strongest protection in the group? Embarrassed, Keed replied that probably yes, and then the girl handed him a magical device and asked him to look more closely. She suggested that he go ahead, and she would set traps behind. That way everyone would be safe. Hearing this, the boy was quite surprised. It seemed as if she wanted to make him a living trap detector. He instantly understood Fiona simply relied on his supernatural protection. The boy quickly assessed the item she gave him. The result stunned him. The artifact could cancel a deadly blow, but only once every 72 hours. It turned out Fiona had already anticipated that he might suffer a fatal attack. He asked if she had anything to disarm the traps, but she only sighed. She had nothing like that. Yet Fiona remained confident. She had heard from the guild about their achievements and believed they would manage. Rhea also shone with enthusiasm, though Keed did not share her optimism. Though doubtful, he agreed. The girl's plan was quite logical, and as a mage healer he could not put others at risk, so he went first. When they moved further, Rhea suddenly felt a faint magical signal and sharply warned, to the left a trap, but a safe one. Keed looked at her with distrust. A safe trap. He only sighed wearily and was about to go around her, but at that very moment accidentally stepped on a tile under his feet. Rhea shouted his name, but it was already too late. Click, and the arrow flew straight at him. It hit his clothes, ricocheted down and thudded to the ground. The girls froze in fear, and Keed, blinking, just looked at the arrow. He did not understand where it had come from. Fiona sighed with relief and explained that his defense far exceeded the norm. Rhea added that it was not a magical trap, so she simply could not sense it. Keed reassured them physical traps do not pose a real threat, they are just distractions. After assessing, he realized there are dozens of such mechanisms, so instead of bypassing each one in turn, he decided to activate them all at once. Good idea. He asked Fiona. She reluctantly nodded, and Keed stepped forward. The corridor exploded with a rain of arrows, fire, and light. Keed asked Rhea where exactly the magical traps were located and how many there were. The girl, looking around, replied that one was right near him, and this did not please him at all. No matter how much he looked, he saw nothing. If he cannot see the trap, then he will not be able to analyze it either. Fiona explained. Magical traps are well camouflaged. Usually she notices a few, but this time she does not see any. The archaeologist praised Rhea for her attentiveness, calling her charming, but giggled awkwardly. Keed realized that now he would have to rely on Rhea and asked how to disarm a magical trap, and the girls answered. Just step on it, which chilled him. That is dangerous. Rhea reassured him, nothing terrible will happen. Some traps only block the path. If he does not want to, he can avoid them. Keed looked at Fiona. What will happen if he still steps on it? She replied that it all depends on the type of trap. The last time she was here, some summoned monsters, others streams of icy water, and some drained strength, which is why she retreated then. She would never step on them herself, but Rhea insisted, and Keed felt. The girl definitely knows what she is doing, so, although reluctantly, he agreed to try. He carefully stepped his foot onto the floor, a moment of tension, and nothing happened. Why? He asked. Rhea smiled. That's why I told you to do it. The magical energy of the trap simply dissipated from Keed's power, because in such constructs, it is almost absent. His own mana seemed to eat them from the inside, and he only thought confusedly that he probably accidentally broke everything around. It turned out that this had already happened to him. For others, it is impossible, but for Keed it became a usual thing. They came across massive doors, and the girls froze, not knowing what was hiding behind them. Keed hesitated whether it was worth looking inside after all. There could be many traps. Fiona suggested that these ruins were once part of a structure, possibly even a research base, and if it is not a military facility, there might be no traps. The boy agreed it is pointless to set traps in a safe room, although the corridor was full of them. Still, he decided to take the risk. Inside the room, everything looked almost undamaged, only strange symbols on the walls confused Fiona, and she guessed that the former inhabitant fled, leaving emptiness and possibly traps that now guard the remains of the system. Keed was already ready to stop the search. Suspicion was in the air, but Fiona asked not to give up. If there are traps in the corridor, it means that nearby there might be treasure or something very valuable, even without that. These ruins themselves are a real find for science. Perhaps here, like in Herrera, secret doors are hidden, and Keed assured that he would fulfill her request to the end. He asked if they had finished the inspection. Fiona nodded she would return later to look at the details, and if supplies were enough, Keed could make the place safe. Then they decided to go deeper. The corridors narrowed, the walls became denser, the air heavier. It seemed the labyrinth itself was breathing. Rhea suddenly became alert, ahead strange magic. Keed asked if this trap was different from the previous ones, and the girl shrugged. The energy was weak. It was possible to try to step on it. Fiona, on the contrary, suggested retreating and leaving the boy alone. He did not like the plan, but there was no way out. The trap suddenly activated by itself. Rhea instantly warned everyone this time there was enough magic in it not to dissipate. Keed became alert. What kind of type was this? The ground buzzed underfoot, and he sharply turned around. The girls froze. Something huge was approaching from the darkness. It was a trap. A huge metal wheel was rolling down the narrow corridor straight at them. The only chance to survive was to run at full speed. Rhea felt that a physical and magical trap were intertwined here, too complex a construction. Despite the danger, Keed was fascinated. The sophistication of the traps was simply striking, and he shouted to the girls to run forward without looking back. He himself activated acceleration magic and dashed down the corridor, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. This burst activated the rest of the traps ahead, and Keed, stopping, pondered how to act next. The metal wheel was madly chasing the girls. Instead of running away, the boy turned to it. A desperate plan was ripening in his mind. He explained that he would try to stop it. Rhea fearfully reminded him, such mechanisms are almost impossible to destroy. Keed replied that he did not intend to destroy it, only to stop it, and summoned stone magic, creating a wall. And to everyone's horror, the wheel broke through the barrier and did not slow down for a moment. The rumble filled the tunnel. The trap continued its deadly run. In a frightened voice, Keed ordered the girls to run forward. Tears sprang from the eyes of Rhea and Fiona, but gritting their teeth, they dashed forward with all their might, feeling the approach of death behind them. The wheel rushed faster and faster. The rumble shattered the silence and filled the entire tunnel, and Keed realized. The path was sloping now. His magic could not stop this metallic force. They ran quite a distance. Keed asked Ray if there was a crossroads ahead, and she suddenly exclaimed that she saw a left turn. When they approached, a room opened ahead. The boy asked if there were monsters, and Rhea assured him there was no one. Running inside, Keed suddenly froze in amazement. Before him glowed a thing that repelled magic. An object that ignored any magic, looked impossibly real. Keed guessed it was a trap, but running further was even more dangerous. Wheel was already rolling very close, and there was no time left. Inside, everything became clear. It was a dead end. The boy ordered the girls to stand still and not move. He unleashed all his magic on the wall with all his might, but in vain. The stone was not even scratched. The protection was absolute. Rhea sharply felt a powerful surge of energy and shouted for him to look up. Keed raised. His iced ceiling cracked, and something began to fall from above. With a rumble, dozens of shiny mechanical artifacts poured down on them, like giant cubes in claw-like frames. These were crusher machines of the third type, massive, ruthless machines created to destroy everything in their path. Just as they fell, they immediately came to life. The metal giants slowly moved forward, and the friends threw themselves aside, dodging the blows. Each move of the crushers thundered as if the earth was shaking. Keed asked Ryu how many strikes were needed to pierce them with a stone spear. The girl estimated 20. This number struck him, and he understood they needed to buy time. The boy ordered Ray to protect Fiona, and he himself, activating acceleration magic, rushed forward to meet the metal monsters. Fiona watched his movements with surprise. The magic sword was powerless against steel, and Keed suddenly realized. The strike must be not on the body, but on the energy core. His goal is those crystals that gave life to the machines. He struck one of the crushers with his sword, and a faint crack ran across the artifact. "Once more!" shouted Rhea, and the machines rushed into chaotic motion, trying to knock the boy down. He realized there is no need to break the armor, it is enough to deprive the enemy of movement. Fiona, frightened, whispered that she could not help, but Keed assured her. Her task is to survive, he will take care of them. Gathering magical energy, he created dozens of huge stone spears and threw them toward the machines. One powerful swing end, the metal thugs shattered into pieces. The corridor emptied, and the path to the exit opened. Fiona froze in surprise, not believing her eyes. Keed said embarrassedly that he was just a traveler. At the same moment, Rhea bent down to the floor and noticed a magical stone. The boy guessed that it was the energy source for the machines and suggested destroying it. They moved further along the narrow corridor. Keed looked closely and noticed that the car wreckage could have damaged the wall. Rhea nodded anxiously, and suddenly a quiet cry sounded. They turned around. Fiona was kneeling and sobbing over a pile of ashes. Those were her research notes, destroyed during the battle. Someone created a trap that destroys its own fortress. "Why?" she whispered. Keed just remained silent, had no answer. Rhea called him over and asked for help to roll back the heavy metal roller. The boy asked in surprise, "Why do this since behind it is emptiness?" Rhea objected, "There is something under it." He bent down and indeed saw a strange glow beneath the metal. They both strained together, 1, 2, 3. And the roller rolled sideways with a crack. Under it lay a sword, ancient, darkened by time but still with a flawless shape. Rhea tried with all her might to lift it, and almost fell. The sword turned out to be incredibly heavy. Keed came to help, and was surprised himself. Even for him, it was a real burden. He managed to hold the blade in his hands, and Fiona, fascinated, whispered that it was probably a gravitational sword, a weapon that controls the force of gravity. Keed was puzzled and did not understand what Fiona meant, thinking that some effect was acting on him, making his body heavier. After evaluation, he was convinced it really was a gravitational sword of incredible power. Its blade created enhanced gravity during a swing. Keed could not comprehend how one could fight with such a weapon without crushing oneself. Fiona said with surprise that it was indeed a very powerful blade. No one had been able to lift it before. Only a few travelers had ever touched it, but they had their own weapons, so they did not take it with them. The boy asked if the sword was needed for research. It was clearly an artifact. The girl agreed, but said it was not a very rare item and suggested keeping it, to which Keed readily agreed. Fiona decided that for today research was enough. The boy was surprised it was so quick, but she explained the main thing was to activate the traps, and the full excavation would be done later. On the way back they talked, and Fiona cheerfully summed up. For the first time in a long time, the day went according to plan. Even the traps could not spoil her mood. Suddenly she accidentally stepped on the tile. Rhea shuddered, and Keed felt the air around vibrate. They both understood what had happened. The same crushers started moving again. Fiona apologized fearfully, but the boy calmly said that everything was under control. A new plan was already forming in his mind. In the narrow corridor, he could not reach their crystals. Rhea asked, "Why not try the new sword?" The boy noticed with surprise that the weight of the sword did not hinder his movements at all. Perhaps it had an enchantment that weakened gravity for the owner. Gathering his strength, he jumped forward and with all his might brought down the blade. The gravitational sword revealed its true power. Its strike cut through the metal bodies of the artifacts, as if they were made of clay. No magical sword would dare to do that. Keed was glowing with delight. He really liked this sword. Fiona sincerely thanked him and Rhea for the excellent work, and since everyone was unharmed, she suggested discussing further actions. Rhea asked if the task was already completed, but Keed replied gloomily that it was not. They needed to find information about the destroyed artifacts. He, hoping intensely, asked if Fiona had found anything related to the earthquake. She answered that she had, but it had nothing to do with the ruins. Keed decided that their efforts were in vain, but the girl refuted this and asked if he had heard of Rotama Kosa. The boy shook his head in denial and asked again if that was a person's name. Fiona confirmed and added, "The full name is Radum Kospen Ortian. In this world, only nobles have surnames. Ortian is the name of the city," and Keed understood. This man is probably a local lord, so he inquired whether it would be disrespectful to address him without a title. Fiona reassured him. There is nothing to fear. This man is only the heir to power, not the true ruler. The locals despise and openly hate him. She fearfully recounted that a month ago the lady went to the capital and left Radum in charge, and he immediately raised taxes, robbed shops, accused the innocent, and executed them without trial. Keed, stunned, asked, "Isn't that a crime?" Fiona explained that duels are considered voluntary even if they end in death. If the opponent dies, it is not considered murder. That's how things are done in this world. Keed asked how this man was connected to the earthquakes and heard. He was the one who ordered the guild to hide the truth. She was sure that Radom not only stopped the investigation, but also embezzled the money intended for it. Many people suffered because of this, including her, and Keed nodded grimly, listening attentively. He asked directly, "What do you want from me?" The girl sighed deeply and, unable to contain her anger, whispered, "I want him to pay." Then she quietly added, "Even if it means killing." Keed became wary. Could he really become a criminal? Fiona replied that Radom constantly kills people in duels. If Keed challenges him as an adventurer of rank E, it will be legal. In this world, strength is rank, and people like him are almost never encountered. A person who tortures the people and destroys artifacts deserves punishment at least. That's what the boy decided. He asked for some time to think it over, and Fiona agreed without saying a word. Her request to kill the deputy lord sounded too serious. Keed felt she was not lying, but decided to make sure himself before taking on this bloody contract. Keed decided first to search the city for information and personally visit Radom. He did not even know what he looked like when suddenly he heard a commotion on the street and froze. The stranger, holding a sack in his hands, was scolding an old man and brazenly declared that he should be thankful he was allowed to pay taxes directly to Mr. Radomkos. Keed immediately realized this was the same scoundrel that Fiona had told about. The boy approached the crowd and asked what was happening, and the merchant, seeing his curious look, advised him not to get involved, saying this was a usual scene for Orthian. The merchant sadly explained, this was Radom's typical trick. He chooses a victim, raises the tax tenfold, and if the person cannot pay, takes away their property. When everything is ruined, he confiscates the shop as well. The merchant coldly warned Keed, don't interfere, because as soon as Radom notices resistance, he will accuse you of slander and call you to a duel. People have died more than once trying to resist, and Keed grimly admitted, yes, this is real scum. Now he almost did not doubt that the rumors about this villain's involvement in the destruction of artifacts were true. One of the witnesses quietly muttered that he wanted the true mistress of Forsen to return soon, but Radom heard these words. The governor, inflamed with rage, exploded at the man, called him a worthless stinker for daring to call him a scoundrel, and coldly asked if he was ready to answer for his words. As always, Radom solemnly issued a challenge, a duel, to the death, confident in his own invincibility. The poor townsman begged Keed not to interfere, just not to get caught in the crossfire, and Radom only mocked, convinced that no one would want to die for some merchant. He, with feigned leniency, promised pardon if the man paid triple the tax and forgot the insult. The man tried to object. Keed clenched his fist. Such contempt outraged him. Meanwhile, Rhea covered her face with her hand. It turned out she pressed her nose. An unbearable stench was coming from Radom. The trembling merchant tried to divert attention, but the crowd had already burst into laughter. Radom, realizing he was being mocked, became even angrier. He called Rhea a cheeky child and declared it a noble aroma. Then, hissing with rage, moved toward her, intending to teach her a lesson. But he didn't manage to. Keed tripped him, and the self-satisfied nobleman fell with a dull thud right into the mud. The guy was not a theater master, but he couldn't resist. Smiling, he agreed, yes, the smell is really terrible. It doesn't come from the perfume, but from the pan himself. Rhea was surprised by his tone and the fact that he took off his jacket. Keed explained he does this to look like an ordinary, weak traveler. Radom stood up, offended and covered in dirt, and began to scold the boy. The boy calmly replied that he saw no point in fearing a spoiled scoundrel, and asked if he could withstand a duel with the strongest adventurer of rank. At first, Radom did not hear the rank, but as soon as he realized, his face stretched into a mocking smile. "Wonderful," he said. "You and the rest of the fools will find out what happens when you cross me."